freedom, man. That's what it's all about. You've got to groove on freedom, like the good book says.
Welcome. You are listening to What on Earth is Happening. This show will discuss the topics of human consciousness, mind control, natural law, the occult, and all issues that affect the freedom of the people of Earth. What on Earth is Happening will endeavor to shine light upon the darkness of our world and to offer empowering solutions to the problems we face as humanity approaches its critical moment of choice. And now, here is your host, Mark Passio.
Welcome one and all, you're watching What on Earth is Happening. I'm your host, Mark Passio. My website, whatonearthishappening.com. Ladies and gentlemen, government is slavery. And here on What on Earth is Happening, we are ending slavery, one mind at a time. Thanks for tuning in today. We have a great show lined up for you here today. Today is Sunday, May 5th, 2019. This is episode number 208, and today's show is going to be a call-in show that's going to act as a follow-up from last week's show, the topic of which was least harm possible, plant-based nutrition versus Carnism Revisited. So we're going to be taking your calls almost the entire show. I do have a couple of quick things that I want to wrap up on because we sort of didn't really beat the clock last week. We ran out of time during my last couple of slides, and I just want to go over a couple of things that were left out of the show last week very briefly at the beginning of today's show, and then we're going to be taking your calls on Discord for the duration of the show today. You can get the link for the Discord call-in on the What on Earth is Happening live show page at whatonearthishappening.com/show. So that's the show for today coming up. Now, I want to just do some very brief housekeeping. I am still looking for a video editor live here in-house. We have a couple of editors that we work with, but they're remote, and I would like to do some projects that require a video editor being here on site working with me in real time. So if you have skills particularly with Final Cut Pro and you live in the Philadelphia area or you're within a short travel distance to my home in South Philly, please get in touch with my assistant Leah Boone at leah@whatonearthishappening.com, and she's going to ask for examples of your video editing work. And if you're interested in helping out on a volunteer basis with What on Earth is Happening. So that's LEIHA at whatonearthishappening.com, and my assistant's name is Leah Boone. So please get in touch with her if you're interested in being a video editor here on site at What on Earth is Happening headquarters. That's really all the housekeeping that I have for today. So I'm going to get ready to jump into the show. Just give me one moment. So last week's show went pretty well, and I've gotten a lot of very good feedback on the show. There's also been there's not been a lot, but there's also been some negative feedback, and I expect that as well, because I don't expect everybody to understand the totality of, what I covered. I'm just getting my slides together, folks. Just bear with me one second. So, I will take anybody's call today. I will not really, discriminate if you want to disagree. Okay. So, there's, nothing that's going to be forbidden, but I am going to, if people do disagree with what I talked about regarding the morality of the topic of veganism versus carnism, or just in general, a plant-based diet versus carnism, I am going to ask certain questions of individuals who disagree, and I want them to answer those questions first before they make their points, because I'm going to kind of hold people's feet to the fire, regarding, what their beliefs are on this topic. Okay. So that being said, I think we could jump into the slides for today and go over to the computer slides. So this is the artwork that Brett came up with for today's show. Again, it's a call-in show, and I want to let everybody know, even before I go to the calls, I'm going to do a few slides and then go to the calls, but I want to let everybody know to if you are calling in via the Discord chat room, do not listen to the live stream. The live stream will be delayed by often several seconds, possibly even up to 20 or 30 seconds, depending on your internet connection speed. Okay, so you don't want to be listening to the live stream or watching the live stream. You should only be listening to me in the Discord chat room if you are planning on calling in, because that's where the real-time voice interaction will be taking place. If you're watching on the live stream, I will probably call on you, and it will be delayed, and you will miss me calling on you to go live, because as soon as I call on you, you should jump in, with your question or comment. Okay, so I'll go over those, technical things in a moment, but let's jump into the last few slides that I really wanted to cover from last week. One of them, which I didn't even really have a slide for, but I wanted to mention. So last week, we got into all of the aspects, the moral aspects of a plant-based diet versus a meat-eating diet. And I talked about all of the aspects regarding natural law and morality that have to do with making the decision about how a human being should eat and how we should view the eating of animals in an immoral capacity, if we're being honest with ourselves. I covered all of that, and then I got into some of the positive aspects of just general nutrition, okay? Like what I think people really should be doing and the things that they should be looking into. And this is something that I left out, okay? I left out talking about the importance of iodine in the human diet as a supplement, okay? Iodine is not something that the body produces, but it's something that's very, very important for the regulation of thyroid health, okay? So, sorry about that, folks. I just took care of that. My laptop power cord was plugged into the wrong jack, so sorry about that. But I wanted to let people know about a form of iodine that we all really should be taking as a supplement, okay, on a daily basis. And I've been taking this for several years, every single day of my life without missing a day, okay, as a total regimen. As something that I have habituated as a regimen. Every single morning when I wake up, I take nascent iodine. Okay, now nascent iodine is an unbound atomic form of iodine that really has been removed from anything that once even contained it, like certain types of sea salt. Okay, now you have processed salts where the iodine is actually removed. Okay, and they've done this deliberately. They've taken it out because they know how beneficial this is, not only for the health of the thyroid, which it very much helps to regulate. And the thyroid regulates so many other functions of the body that really being deficient in iodine is an actual health issue, can become a detrimental health issue. So this is something that I will highly recommend. It's something that I've been doing. This is the proper way to get it into your body, is by taking the atomic form, the unbound atomic form of it, and not a polluted form of the iodine. So there's many different forms of nascent iodine on the market. You could research that, look on any of your favorite health sites or any shopping sites that you want to check out. and you could often find really great deals on them. So, do your research and purchase something that you feel is a quality product, and take it every day, because it really has made a tremendous difference in my personal health, and I highly recommend it. It's something that shouldn't be overlooked. I mean, this is like something to me that is as important as juicing and blending in your daily regimen. Fruit juices, vegetable juices, and blending, making healthy smoothies. Often you could even add protein powder to smoothies. That's what I basically do. I'll make fruit smoothies with added protein powder in them, or, even green smoothies, with spinach or kale or celery. I mean, that's the way to do it with a high-powered juicer or blender. Now, I would say Nascent Iodine is right up there with importance, and it's also right up there with things that people lack and don't do. They don't supplement their diet properly. They don't take the right supplements. They don't take, the right things that when you add it to a healthy, whole plant-based diet, whole foods plant-based diet, based in nature, as undiluted and unpolluted as possible, straight from the earth. If you don't supplement with iodine, you're making a huge mistake. It's as big of a mistake as not doing fruit and vegetable juicing and blending. Okay, so that's what I wanted to say regarding Nascent Iodine. I also wanted, I talked last week about all of these health fads and these diet fads, these fad diets and crazes that you see pop up, and how people will follow them because they don't really have the information that they need. They haven't really done the research and the homework. And then they're so, craving to look for something that some expert knows about that is, going to help them and going to improve their health or change their body type, or make them feel energetic again. And it's so simple. None of these fad diets, I wanted to talk about I did talk about the keto diet and, the paleo diet. One thing I didn't talk about is the blood type diet. This is another big craze, and it's another big fad diet. All of these fad diets are just get rich quick schemes by the people that come up with them, as far as I'm concerned. Okay. And one of the things they never talk about, they always talk about, well, here's the things you need to restrict completely from your diet. Don't ever eat this. Don't ever eat that. As soon as you hear don't ever eat this or that, unless it's something that's completely artificial, like artificial sweeteners, okay, dyes, colorings, all that shit that's in our diet, all those poisons, okay? As soon as somebody starts talking about any natural food that grows in the earth, okay, that is actually here for humans to consume, I'm automatically suspect, and I will say that that's automatically some type of, fad diet that's being marketed to people because they know how gullible they are, they know how little they know about real plant-based nutrition, and they know how, just desperate they are to go to, some sort of an expert and, follow everything that they say. I'd group the blood type diet in with all of that. Okay. I would also group the grain-free diet in with all of that. And I know there's going to be people who, hey, they're going to disagree with all of this. Okay. But grains aren't in and of themselves poisons as they grow in the earth naturally. Okay. No one is going to convince me of that. Okay. I don't really care where your studies came from. My take is if it grows in the earth naturally, and it's not something that's inherently poisonous, like poisonous berries or things like that. There are certain inherently poisonous plants that human beings cannot consume, obviously. Okay. That's common sense knowledge that things like that exist in nature. Grains are not one of those things. Certain grains have become poisonous because of the way human beings have genetically modified them. And I'm going to say genetic modification, okay? So, how certain grains have been modified, and this is why there's a stigma in many health diets and fad diets against all grains. And I do not agree with that stigma. I think it is a false equivalency. Okay. That being said, you have to be very careful with many grains, with most of them, because most of them are genetically modified. And here's the problem with this, folks. They don't have to be labeled genetically modified because they are not genetically modified in a laboratory with some type of actual, chemical or physical modification of the grain. They are genetically modified through the process of genetic hybridization in the fields, in the way that they are crossbred and grown. So that type of genetic modification, which is called genetic hybridization, does not have to be labeled as a GMO food in almost any place in the world, especially in the United States. I'm not going to say that that's true for every country in the world. In some places that may have to be labeled if that is the case, but I'm telling you definitively that in the entire United States, no product containing genetically hybridized grain ever has to be labeled as a GMO food, as a genetically modified organism. Okay? So this is where people don't understand the difference between these things. And if you research it, the process of genetic hybridization creates a poisonous protein in many grains, specifically modern wheat. Okay? And if you look at modern wheat versus ancient wheat, you could actually see the physical difference in the size of the wheat berry. Okay? But that's like just, that has not really, the size of it and shape of it has very little to do with what's going on inside of it. Okay? Because that's ultimately way more important. Okay? It produces a protein that is not really found in grains as nature grew them and intended, okay? And it's called gliadin. Now, if you research gliadin, this is a poisonous protein for the human immune system, reproductive system, digestive system, everything. It's a very, very insidious poison. It's a poisonous agent. And this is contained in just about all modified modern grain strains. Okay, the genetically hybridized forms of wheat. Okay, now if you go back to ancient grains, you're not going to have these problems. Okay, you're not going to have this poisonous protein in it. And this is what almost hardly any researcher or any person advocating grain-free diets ever really talks about. And what they'll say is avoid them all because you're not going to know the difference. That's untrue. It is possible to know the difference in which grains are hybridized and not. Anything called wheat, plain wheat, is going to be hybridized, okay? But if you get an ancient form of wheat like einkorn or an ancient spelt, okay, or an ancient kamut wheat, then those things are not going to be genetically hybridized. So you want to look for organic and ancient grains, okay? So amaranth, quinoa, a millet, things like that. Not only are many of them gluten-free, they're going to be gliadin-free if they're organic and non-genetically hybridized. So ancient organic grains, okay? So I just want to let people know that we need to break this whole idea that anybody saying just avoid this whole thing in nature 100% completely is selling you a bill of goods. As far as I'm concerned, I don't subscribe to any of these restrictive forms of dieting, okay? I subscribe to a whole and complete nutritious diet based on plant foods that are largely unmodified by the work of man. If nature grew it and it is safe for us to eat, okay, and it's largely unmodified and not polluted by what man does to it, so almost completely unprocessed, use it in your diet. It's called a common sense approach to nutrition and health. Okay? And all of these other fad diets are just, they're there to sell people a bill of goods in a naive state and in a hungry state to get, information that they lack because they don't want to do the research themselves. And opportunists will come in and sell them all these fad diets. And that's exactly what's going on. So you need to research gliadin, which is the poisonous protein that is created in wheat and certain other grains, but mostly in wheat, through the process of genetic hybridization. Okay? Last week, I kind of ended the show trying to rush through what adaptogens were. And I think this is also very important and also very not understood by people when they study nutrition and health. And yet, these are some of the most important herbs that we could be using to supplement our diet. Adaptogens are compounds which help the body to adapt to stress and exert a normalizing effect upon bodily processes. And I'm talking about across the spectrum of body functions, okay? Just about every way that your internal organs function, to weight regulation, to energy, you name it. It will normalize things. If you are underweight, it will help you to gain weight. If you are overweight, it will help you to lose weight. They'll give you a lot of energy by taking these in the right amounts. Okay. Some of them you have to be careful with. If you take too much, it could actually, wire you up like caffeine can. Okay. So you want to look into adaptogens. You want to do your research on them. Some common examples are ashwagandha. I take this all the time as well. Okay. Astragalus root. Great for detoxification and energy. That's also something that I try to take whenever I can. Cordyceps mushrooms, ginseng, licorice root, rhodiola rosea. Okay, all of these you want to do your research into and start getting on different adaptogens. I highly recommend ashwagandha. It's something that's also very much helped with my, energy and overall regulation, body regulation. Okay. It's really good for men and women as well. So, and astragalus, I can't say enough good things about that. And then you could look into all of the beneficial mushrooms, the cordyceps mushroom, the blase mushroom, the chaga, all of those, different types of fungus in the form of mushrooms can have an extremely high health benefit on the diet when they're used as supplements. You put them in smoothies, etc. There are certain forms of coffee that have these infused in them. NutriCafe is one example. Okay, so the whole point here is that adaptogens regulate body processes and they help with stress. They help reduce stressor effects. Okay, so very beneficial. And they're another thing that a lot of people leave out of the diet and don't know anything about and have never even heard of. Okay, so that's something that I left off talking about last week. And then I just wanted to wrap up this whole topic by just saying that eating well is actually a form of self-respect. When we make our food choices, we are choosing between putting toxic and poisonous substances in our body or putting life-giving substances that came from nature, came from the earth, and ultimately came from the sun. As I talked about last week, you want to talk about what the source of everything here is? It is our star, the sun. Okay. And, that's where all energy in life is ultimately connected to, folks. And like I said, it's something beyond what we even understand. We don't even know what the sun and the light that comes from the sun even really ultimately is. It's a form of energy. It's a form of spirit. It's a form of nurturing. And it's like the core of nature. Okay. It's everything in this solar system. No life would be possible without it. And that's where these plants really get their energy, connected to the earth, through the process of photosynthesis. And then they transmute that energy to us when we take them in, as we are meant to. Okay. So, respect is what this is all about, especially self-respect. So many people are in this self-loathing state. They don't want the truth. They don't want real knowledge. And therefore they want to treat themselves as if they don't deserve anything better in life. This is why we're in a state of slavery, ladies and gentlemen. We're in a state, no self-respecting species could allow themselves to remain in a state of slavery. We are in a self-loathing state as a species, and our diet has a lot to do with it. See, this is a big in point for a lot of people. I've told people many times, this came last for me. I got all the other stuff, folks. I got all of it, all the aspects of the conspiracy, the worldwide conspiratorial aspects, all of the political and financial machinations that are taking place in the whole political spectrum. I got the whole, polarization dialectics, the mind control techniques, the occult, all of it. The last thing that fell into place for me personally was a change of diet and an understanding of real plant-based nutrition and how powerfully mind-changing that could be for the positive, to help us to get the brain fog out and help us to really clarify and develop a true sense of self-respect, clarify our thoughts, emotions, actions. It's a process of purification. I would go so far as to say it is internal alchemy. Okay. And then when you get yourself in a state of health and strength, then you are ready to do the great work of external influence, which is a process of alchemy, by putting this information and knowledge out there for other people. And that's what the great work is to really do. Okay, so I'll wrap up this formal presentation right there. Okay, and another thing I neglected to do last week because we ran out of time was to just, wrap up housekeeping as far as, talking about what supports our efforts here at What on Earth is Happening. We couldn't do this without you. I have a fantastic internal team that helps me produce this show every week. I want to thank the crew and all the people who assist with that. Their efforts are absolutely invaluable. Okay. The people who don't necessarily directly interact to help the processes here at What on Earth is Happening, you can help indirectly. And if you want to go to gifts.whatonearthishappening.com or just go to whatonearthishappening.com and click the gifts button or tab, okay, there's hard items that you could order, okay, that are my DVDs, flash drives. We have t-shirts up there. We have keychains and stickers and buttons and coasters, just little simple merchandise items that, you could make a donation for, okay? And then they'll be sent to you as a free gift, okay? So there's, it's an exchange of a gifting. It's an exchange of gratitude, basically, is what we're talking about here. So thank you to everyone who has contributed at donation gifts. Okay, please keep that up because it helps the efforts continue here at What on Earth is Happening. So thank you for engaging in that site. If you want to receive the ARC Drive, which is a collection of all of the research material that helped me to gain the best research material that I've put together and assembled in one place on one hard drive, that helped me to gain the understanding of the world that I did, post coming out of the occult, the world of the dark occult. All right. I started to become an obsessive researcher in all of this once I understood who was really running the world. Okay, through direct involvement in groups like that. And then I became an obsessive researcher and I started gathering digital information from every corner of the internet, what you might call the dark web. Okay. And I put all of the best research, aggregated all of my best research data onto one terabyte hard drive. And then I started copying that for people and distributing it. So if you're interested in receiving all of that research data that I put together many years ago, you can go to whatonearthishappening.com/ARC. The ARC stands for the Amazing Repository of Knowledge. And if you fill out the form there, you can then get the PDF document, which contains the shipping instructions for how to obtain the ARC Drive. Many, many people have now taken me up on the ARC Drive, and it's great that data is proliferated and it's out there. And at some point in the future, I've started the project, but haven't had the time to completely finish it. I will be building a second iteration of the ARC Drive, which is actually going to double. It's going to be a 2 terabyte drive, but I haven't gotten to completing that project yet. I probably will, by the end of the year. And then if you want to make a straight donation to the cause of What on Earth is Happening, you can go to the donate page. Click the donate tab or just go to whatonearthishappening.com/donate. There are 10 different methods on how to donate to What on Earth is Happening. This slide still says 9. I'll update it at some point. But basically, you could contribute by PayPal. Check out our new Patreon page. I've been posting all of the podcasts to the Patreon page. So if you want to become a monthly donor through Patreon, you can go to patreon.com/Mark Passio. You could donate through PayPal, paypal.me/Mark Passio. There are 5 different cryptocurrencies that I accept, and all the addresses and QR codes are up on the donate page. You could donate by personal check, by personal money order. And another great way, and people have been really taking me up on this, is our Amazon wish list for technology. We're always in need of different technological items as the operation here expands and grows. We are trying to bring some new workstations and basically bring some new people to work on graphics and video here. There are some items in the Amazon wish list. If people would like to contribute by donating that way, you could also do that. Thank you to all the people who have donated in any way. You know who you are, and we completely, sincerely appreciate your very generous donations for What on Earth is Happening. We would not be able to continue to do this, to make this effort, to continue this cause without your generous support. So thank you so much. That being said, let's go to your calls in a moment, okay? Now, what I want to let everybody know is I'm going to read some of the basic ground rules, or just like the setup that needs to be understood for calling into Discord. I've covered this a couple of times. I'm going to do it one more time before we go in. So I always have to put these headphones on before I take calls, because I'm actually taking calls right on the computer that is connected right here, so it's going out over a different mic. What I've been doing the last few shows is leaving the microphone for this headset on at the beginning of the show so that people in the Discord room could get used to hearing my voice live and see how it's different from the live stream. Okay, so what you want to do, I'm going to basically read some of the instructions. Okay, so when you go into the Discord room using the link on the show page, the link to get into the call section, to get into the call app and in the server where I take the calls, is at whatonearthishappening.com/show. You can click the link that says click here to call in live using Discord right on that page. Okay, that'll take you into the Discord server that we use here to take calls. Discord is like just Skype on steroids, or Facebook Messenger on steroids, or Google Hangouts on steroids. Okay, we're talking about basically just a chat and a voice and video app. Okay, that you could just talk to other people through. It's mostly used for gaming, largely. Okay, my producer just asked me, he thought it would be a good idea to just show people the Discord link on the show page. Largely, I'm gonna pause the video that's playing there, okay, on my browser, and just show you. This is the link right here. Okay, you can get the Discord app using this link right here. The word Discord is linked, and that'll take you, I'll just show you real quick. That'll take you to the Discord page where you can download the app for your operating system. Okay, so that's really the best way to do it, is to get the actual desktop app. If you're using it on a phone, that's great too. I recommend using the desktop app. I'm going to just continue to go through the instructions, but I just want to show you here. Here's the link right here. Click here to call in live. Okay, that'll actually take you into the server once you have the app installed. Okay, so yeah, we can cut away from that. Great. Okay, so I'm going to go back to the instructions that I was reading. Okay, so when you go into the server, then you're going to click in What on Earth is Happening call-in room. You want to click the actual voice channel that's listed under voice channels. What on Earth is Happening call-in room. Okay, so you're going to enter it by clicking that. Okay, and then you want to realize that this is not a chat room, at least not when we're on the air. We've allowed some off hours chat after the show, but during the show we don't want that going because it acts as a distraction. Okay, I want you to be paying attention to what's going on the show. Okay, so this is a waiting area to speak to me live on the show. It's not intended to be a chat room. Okay, so you don't want to stay in the room, the What on Earth is Happening call-in room, unless you actually intend to have your call taken live on the air. I highly recommend to use the Discord desktop app or the mobile app and not use the browser interface. You can if you want to, but I don't recommend that. Okay, so you click into the call-in room to enable voice calling. You have to unmute your microphone in the app. Okay, now on the desktop app, that's down here in the bottom left-hand corner. So if I click this, I'm muted. If I unclick it, I'm unmuted. You want to make sure that that is unmuted. I have everybody muted from the server end. Okay, so I have to physically unmute you to take your call. So you want to have your own mic unmuted on your end. Okay, all right. So during the call, you won't be heard, but you will be heard, but you will not be seen live on the video stream. Okay, so there's no video. It's just live audio. Okay, don't listen to the show on any live stream while you wait for your call to be taken. Live streams can be delayed up to 20 seconds, so you may miss being called on. Instead, listen to be called on onto the show by me right on Discord, right in the Discord app. Okay, mute any devices that generate any sound at all. That includes any other app. That includes anything you might be watching the show live on. You want to mute all of that. Okay. Quit any program except Discord that may use the mic or your headphones. Okay. And you have to use headphones, because if you don't, your speakers are going to be feeding back through your microphone. Okay. So use headphones to make sure that the sound only goes into your ears and don't loop back into your mic. Okay. If you're not using headphones and I hear an echo, I may have to terminate the call. I don't want to have to do that. Okay. And I'm going to determine what calls I take. We don't have a specific order. I look at who's in the room and whose calls I want to take. And you will not be screened. There's no call screener. When I go to you, you're live on the air. Okay. And when I call on you by name, you'll be live. So be ready with your comments or questions. All right. So that being said, let's jump in. Okay. All right. We can cut away from that. Here we go. Let's go to Sean McCann. Sean, you are live on What on Earth is Happening, episode number 208. Sean, welcome to the show.
Hi there, Mark. Good to speak with you again.
Excellent. Thank you for participating, and thank you for being ready. I think that might be the first time that the first caller I called upon was totally ready to go. So thanks.
Well, that's good. I'm glad to be part of something and be remembered. I just wanted to say how my experience of how I've grown to my understanding of doing least harm is best, and I wanted to say that your work has been an influence to kind of push me over the edge. My whole life, my mother was vegetarian, and I've always loved animals. It's always been a big part of me, and the cognitive dissonance was just blind to me all my years. And everything that I'm learning about spirituality, it didn't click for that, until it's almost been a year. It was my birthday. And I took.
Can I stop you there for a moment?
Please.
Let me ask you, why do you think that aspect of spirituality didn't click? Because I agree that doesn't click for everyone, even if they study spirituality, particularly from a quote unquote new age perspective. You do have a lot of new agers who become vegetarian. Okay. It kind of overlaps with that community, but it doesn't necessarily directly overlap with spirituality in general. It can, but again, it doesn't necessarily overlap and click for many people. So why do you think that wasn't included in the types of spirituality that you studied particularly?
I can guess that maybe it's because it's so tough for people to make change, and when they face change, they want to reject it. So any kind of spiritual course kind of makes an excuse. I mean, even Manly P. Hall says that animals die willingly to give us their life, and
right.
We can tell that's not true.
Strongly disagree with
and
that.
He's a spiritual man. Like,
right.
How can he say that?
Right.
It doesn't make sense.
You see a lot of contradiction, even in the spiritual spheres.
People are have an aversion to that, just to start with, and that's probably why people don't even try to push that subject.
Do you think it's because it's a polarizing,
in the spiritual sense?
Right. You think it's because it's a polarizing factor that a lot of people who consider themselves even spiritual teachers leave that out of their curriculum, so to speak?
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
And in order to get everybody on board, you gotta make some sacrifice. I mean, be morally relative in some ways.
Well, folks, this is why kind of didn't revisit this topic for so long because it's so polarizing. I see the polarization in the community on this topic. And I did this show last week and the subsequent call-in show this week to try to bridge that polarization and make people realize it does not have to be present. As long as we're being honest with ourselves. See, I don't have any problem with people continuing the Carnist diet as long as they make the spiritual realization that this isn't the optimum way for human beings to be in the world, right? Where I consider the hardcore ignorance coming from is the people who actually have come to the incorrect conclusion that we really actually need this in our diet, and that they don't understand that there is a proper way to convert from a Carnist diet to a plant-based, high-density nutrient diet based on plant food, plant nutrition. There is a right way to do that. There are wrong ways to do it. There are many wrong ways to do it. Okay, I'm trying to give people the tools, the information and the tools that they need to do it properly so that they transition. It's a journey and a transition. It's not an event, as I said last week. Transitioning to a plant-based diet is not an event. It's a journey. It's a process. Okay, so tell us a little bit about how that happened for you and how long it took and how difficult was it?
Well, it was a journey. But I'll tell you what pushed me over the edge was an event. I imbibed it was my birthday, and early morning I had my coffee and a certain entheogen, which put me in a mind space. And before my girlfriend was awake, I was just scrolling through internet, and I happened upon Facebook. I knew it was a bad idea, but I went anyway. And people were discussing how grass-fed beef is great and it's organic and it's good for you. And people were debating, and somebody just posted a photograph of an animal that's enslaved. Its face was bound with metal and ropes, and its eyes were crying and looking at something horrific, and you could see the fear and the pain and the anguish. And I just cried. Like, I opened up and I cried for, it must have been like an hour. My girlfriend woke up to me sobbing. She's like, "What's wrong?" And I just couldn't take it. I mean, everything shattered for me. And now I see meat as different than I used to. I used to see it as, and now I see what it is, and I understand what it, I have to choose to ingest fear and pain, and I have to choose to be that animal's captor. Like 3 times a day, I have to choose wrong, and I just couldn't do it anymore. And that was almost a year ago. I mean, I'm only vegetarian. I'm still, I guess technically I'm still
on the journey,
right. So it is a journey, but
I stayed vegetarian, Sean, for 12 years before I made the commitment to fully go to a total plant-based diet. And it was difficult. I saw the, desires welling up in me to, stay attached to, certain animal-based products. It was a process of, developing that willpower to say, right, I don't really need to stay attached to this. And that's something that we work internally with ourselves to do. And some people do it at a faster pace. Some people do it at a slower pace. For me, the actual stopping of the consumption of meat was far easier than stopping the consumption of different associated products like dairy products. I was much more addicted and, attached to those than I was to actual animal flesh. Even though I was a big meat eater when I was a carnist. Okay. Unbelievable. I was going to tell people about some of the, anecdotes that happened to me of what I was like before and things that got me out of it. So, Sean, just let me know, how long have you been vegetarian for now?
It's been, my birthday is June 1st. So it'll be a year.
Fantastic. Congratulations.
Thank you kindly.
Yeah, great job.
Very nice to
Sean, I'm
Thank
gonna,
you.
unless you have anything else, I'm gonna let you go. I'm gonna tell people a couple of quick anecdotes before I get into another caller.
Well, sure. I'd like for everybody to participate. I suggest speaking with Nathan Riddit. I
I'm
did
gonna do
a
that. I'm actually planning on taking his call next, believe it or not. So
Okay,
yeah,
great.
I'll
Tell
be
him I
bringing
said
him in.
hello.
Yes.
We spoke a couple weeks ago on Evelyn's program, Good Vibrations podcast, and
Excellent.
that was a vegan roundtable. We discussed veganism, and he's very intelligent, and I'm glad you're speaking with him.
Absolutely. Sean, thank you so much for the call. Great points.
Very good. Thanks for having me.
You got it. Take care. So I'll just let everybody know, like, how much of a meat eater I was. I used to go to like those Brazilian steakhouses, the Brazilian barbecue steakhouses, with friends. And just, there are some in Philadelphia here that have this little gimmick that they give you like a chip, like almost like a casino chip or like a coaster. Okay. And one side is red and one side is green. And they just tell you, keep this in front of your placemat here. And if you want to keep having meat served to you, different cuts, keep it on the green side. And when you're full, flip it over to the red side, and we won't keep bringing different cuts of meat over to you, to your plate. Okay. And like, we'd be sitting at a table with like 10 people having dinner, and like me and like one other guy, would still have it on green long after everybody had stopped and flipped their chip over to the red side. And then we'd be like, almost like competing, like to see who could keep going, and finally, like literally people are done, and we've had like, 8 more helpings brought over to us long after they had finished, and we're still going, and everybody is just looking at us like, are these guys serious? Like, you're like machines or something, where are you even putting it? And we'd keep that chip on green, and finally, like on like the 9th round, he turns his over to red, and I left mine on green for yet another couple. Okay. That's how big of a meat eater I was. So I'm not talking about somebody that just occasionally participated in eating some meat. I was like ravenously devoured it. And yet when I made the decision to start even weaning off of meat, I thought it was going to be this like gigantic struggle. I thought it was going to be like, I'd be having meat cravings 24 hours a day. I'd be getting up wanting to go down to the refrigerator and, make something with meat in it. And it never happened like that. When I finally did make the decision to even start weaning from it, it was miraculously and strangely easy for me to do. And that was the shock to me. It was a shock to me more than anything else. Like, I was never expecting it to be like that. I was prepared for a battle, a willpower battle, unlike anything I've ever done. And it just didn't happen. Now, dairy products, cheese in particular, was the hardest for me. And that took a lot longer, obviously. But I was mentally committed to eventually making my way toward a fully plant-based diet. And I'm even going to try to not even use the word vegan because of the necessary, the potential connotations that it conjures in people's minds. I don't particularly have a problem with it, but it can develop into a religion when it becomes militant. I was never a militant vegan or a militant plant-based diet person. Okay. I think that this is a journey, a process of self-discovery, a process of being honest with oneself, and then a process of using one's own internal developed willpower to create a change that I feel we should decide to engage in. That's it. And that's the balanced approach that I take to this. Like, I try to take a balanced approach to nutrition. I don't want the polarization that's going on in the community, but I do want people to be honest with themselves about the moral aspect of it. So another quick anecdote before I continue with the calls is I also, as Sean was just saying, was quote unquote helped by a plant psychedelic slash entheogen. Okay. One day I took some psilocybin mushrooms, and it wasn't a large amount. It was a probably under 2 gram amount, which is not blasting you off into outer space. You're still going to interact pretty fine with the everyday world. And it like didn't even like obliterate my hunger. I was still hungry and wanted food. So I went into a Boston market, believe it or not, here in Philadelphia. And I ordered a plate of roast beef and sat down at the table and was eating it when I guess you could say the peak part of the experience was coming on. And it was basically saying, you don't really need this. You believe that you do, but you should look into what is done with the animals that you are consuming and how this ended up on your plate being eaten by you. And like, you know, it's like an external voice. Like it literally, it is like a teacher if you're using it in the right context. And I was simply trying to be observant and, you know, let it guide me, you know, where, you know, and just commune with it. Okay. Because this is a process. Real entheogenic communion is just that. It is a process of sharing consciousness with a aspect of nature. If it's used in the right context, obviously they can be abused. Okay. So it's for people to learn how to use correctly, as we've talked about on other shows. Okay. I don't advocate for just the wild use of psychedelics. It's to be done in the right mental preparedness state. Okay. And that's how I approached it. And I was open-minded to hearing that. But when I heard it, it was like, where did this come from? I know I'm not thinking this. It didn't come from me. Okay. So it's like, if you use psychedelics in a context like that to try to change consciousness, it can gently nudge you to that way. Some of them can be more brutal and be very harsh, you know, but this was just saying you might want to look into whether you really do need that and whether it's actually necessary for your nutrition and your body, or whether you can step away from that because of the violence it's based upon and because of the harm that it causes in the world. And again, that's what this show is called. This is the addendum to least harm possible. It means we can transition to a way of life that is less harmful than the harm we were previously causing. That's what anarchy is all about, and that's what a plant-based diet is all about. So, you know, that being said, I think that people have to understand more. This is less about just polarizing people, right? We have to move away from that polarization and get to the core issue and just ask people to be honest. So, like, you know, if I disagree on this topic with someone else, all I'm going to ask you to do is be honest and see where your moral aspects of your thinking are at. And you don't have to lie about it. You can just be honest. So like I've had conversations with people who still eat meat and they're just like, I know this is causing harm. I know that the animals don't belong to me. I know that my body does not require me if I transition away from a meat-based diet properly. Yet I know also that I don't have the willpower to do that. So I'm going to continue to eat meat. And that's it. Then we're honest with each other and we know where each other stands. Okay? That's all I've ever asked. Just don't lie. That's step one of occult initiation. Stop lying. Don't lie to yourself or other people. But most of all, don't lie to yourself first. You know, if you don't have respect for oneself, you can never really display respect for anybody else. You know, and this is kind of almost where I struggle myself, because I do have that form of self-respect developed for myself, but I'm living in a world where the overwhelmingly vast majority of other people still don't have that developed self-respect. So then I struggle with giving them respect, and I almost fall into like hating people like that who are in that state of self-loathing because they're the ones who are really fucking up the world, you know? And I'm not just talking about obviously like plant-based diet versus carnism. I'm not going to say that they're the ones fucking up the world, but the people who still advocate for human slavery are, okay, and don't understand the moral implications of what they advocate for. Okay, so when it comes to anarchy, I fall into the you know, what you might call trap of, you know, really descending into the lower emotions of just hating people. But I acknowledge that, and I admit it to myself. And I say, okay, this is something I have to work on to try to get people, bring them up more, right? Instead of just giving into that emotion. But I'm not saying we should just like the state that it is. We should be working to change it. It shouldn't be tolerated, okay? It shouldn't just be accepted, right? So there's a balance that has to be developed between just raging hate at people who aren't really trying to change for the positive versus trying to help uplift them and get them to be honest with themselves and others and develop self-respect. Because that's what this is all about, folks. This is about a species that is in a state of what I would call cosmic abandonment with deep parental abandonment issues, okay, and real worldly abandonment issues in the very real 3D world, okay, of people who have not grown up mentally, psychologically, emotionally, and spiritually enough to be honest with themselves. And that's all I'm going to demand of my viewing audience is just honesty. Okay. So if we could do that, we have mutual respect between us. Here's a gentleman that I certainly respect, Nathan Redette. Nathan Redette, you are live on What on Earth is Happening. Welcome.
Well, thank you very much, Mark. And thanks for the kind words from Sean as well. Can you hear me okay?
Absolutely. You're coming through loud and clear.
Fantastic. Fantastic. Well, there's only one mistake you can make on the path to freedom, and that's not being a vegan anarchist.
Excellent.
Well, I'm excited to be on your show again. It's a great honor, Mark. So it's a big part of my work as well. I really try and get this message across that it's wrong to dominate. You know, it's wrong to dominate both humans and animals. So, you know,
it's a hard
religions,
lesson.
so.
It's a hard lesson for people to learn. A lot of them don't want to hear that. They buy into the idea that simply because we are a more advanced and a more capable species in many ways than the other members of the animal kingdom, that somehow puts us in a position to dominate and own them and use them as we see fit. You know, what led you to the understanding that that's not the way reality really works, or the way we should be acting in the world, to help you to understand that their lives belong to them. They want to live, they want to survive, and that we can change and not take part in that harm?
It was coming out of moral relativism.
Okay.
You know, you're learning the objective difference of right and wrong, and you hit it on the nail last week when you were talking about heart-based intelligence. So not only do you know, but you've got to care as well, right? So you don't really know if you don't actually act on it. So true intelligence, you know, and if you really develop that care for yourself, then you're going to eat plant-based. If you develop that care for the animals, you're going to eat plant-based, and certainly for the planet as well.
Now, let me ask you, how long did it take your transition to go to a fully plant-based diet? Did you go through stages like weaning from meat and then becoming vegetarian, then becoming fully plant-based? Sure.
So it was about 5 years ago. I went veggie. Mm-hmm. And then within about 3 or 4 months, I went full plant-based. And I guess Entheogens had a big part of that as well.
Wow.
With these... the quotes from your show just kept niggling at me, you know, to know and not to do is to really not know or care. It was just niggling at me, and the only two mistakes you can make on the path to truth is not starting and not going all the way. So they were just niggling at me all the time, especially on Entheogens. So I just had to take the plunge. So I just stopped buying the dairy stuff. And what I found, Mark, is that if I ate well and I had a full belly, I didn't miss it.
Sure.
I love juicing in the morning, you know, which gives you a great boost for the day.
How is your energy now compared to how it was when you ate meat?
Well, I guess I've been pretty energetic, but I'm not lethargic anymore. Right. And I do martial arts weekly.
Do you hear the argument often coming from people who are still engaging in meat eating that somehow vegans will become less energetic and weaker? Because I hear that a lot coming from the meat industry, and I will tell you emphatically, unless you are doing the plant-based diet very wrongly, very incorrectly, that is most certainly not the case. Folks, I have so much energy it is difficult for me to burn it off most days. Okay. I have such an abundance of energy that I don't even know where to place it. And I find myself even wanting to do more mental activity to just try to get energy out of me. Okay. For people to say that you're not going to be energetic and have energy and strength on a plant-based diet, like, I mean, they obviously haven't done it right or haven't tried it or
Exactly.
haven't followed the methodology properly.
Yeah, I just want to say one thing actually on that. Shaolin monks, Mark.
Right.
They from an early age, they're on a plant-based diet and they do superhuman feats all their life, and they're on a simple plant-based diet. Yep. So, them alone just completely dispel the meat-eating myth. There's the boxer David Hay, Germany's strongest man. They're plant eaters. You can look at a lot of vegan-based athletes.
Sure.
A lot of athletes are moving over to plant-based, as well as MMA fighters. It's all proven. Yeah. But it comes back to this people filtering it through the screening mesh of what they want to and what they do not want to believe, Mark, doesn't it, at the end of the day?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's really the wall that we have to try to break through, is it's what people want to be true versus what actually is true, And if,
sorry.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
I was going to say, if we're doing the trivium on this, we know what's biologically correct. Have you seen MD Mills's presentation, actually, what humans are meant to be?
I have not.
I'd thoroughly recommend it. It's a cracking presentation.
Give the name and title again, please.
MD Mills, are humans supposed to be eating meat? It's along those lines, anyway.
Okay, great.
That you've got Super Juice Me as well. Have you seen that one?
I have seen that.
Yeah, and then you've got Earthlings.
Yep.
If we're doing our homework, then
another good one is Fat, Sick, and Nearly Dead is another great documentary that deals with juicing and how it transformed one human being's health. And just doing basic juicing to detoxify the body from all the harm that he did through, a very high pollutant diet. Obviously, that's an extreme measure. You don't want to be on a liquid diet for a very long amount of time. You could do these things as juice fasts to detox, and then you want to go into, something where you're taking solid food in addition to doing juicing and blending as well. But Fat, Sick, and Nearly Dead is about a gentleman who does a juice fast to reclaim his health after being very sick and, having serious health problems. Very much like the Super Juice Me. Yes. One, yep. Really that was a really powerful one, when I was going through these changes. Mark, I've got a question. Sure. Being so well adversed into Satanism. Okay. Obviously, one of the tenets is keep putting people in duality. Mm-hmm. And, I think Carnism is a morally relative religion as well. Sure. Do you think it's part of the control system that it puts people in a state of duality without them realizing it? And when you're in that state of duality, you're not really going to know the self. Without any doubt whatsoever in my mind, it is part of the satanic agenda, without any doubt. So, and then part of the sort of dog eat dog, social Darwinism. Yep. That's right, because if we believe we can do this to animals, it's only a measure of a step up in psychopathic mindset to then get people to accept that some humans should do this to other humans. So one of the questions I'll always pose to a carnist is, if you're being honest with yourself, should an advanced species, far more advanced than human beings, arrive in our solar system, and they say this is a perfectly great, human beings would be a perfectly great nutritional requirement for our diet, okay? And they decided to just start scooping up humans and eating them at their convenience, would you be the first on the plate? Because it's like, that's how you think about the chain of nature, the so-called natural order of Darwinian macrobiological evolution. So by that definition, you'd be perfectly fine with if a more advanced species turned up here to just hop right on their plate. And not a one of them has ever said, yes, I'd be the first on the plate. which is proof that they're lying to themselves. That's all. So if you're honest with yourself and you really do take that Darwinian, so-called natural order, which isn't natural and doesn't create order, approach to life, to nature, then if you're honest with yourself, you would say, yes, I'd hop on that plate, but none of them ever do. But to go back to your question, the whole continual blood sacrifice of the slaughter of animals on a daily basis, 100% is the practice of satanic ritual in the world, active in the world. Absolutely.
Yeah, I thought so. Yeah.
Yes.
And another thing, focusing on, this is what I really try and focus on, obviously to get order for cults as well. But the law of correspondence with regards to religions of authoritarianism and carnism, I really think that they need to be done alongside each other, just because of those natural laws that bind us in a positive way. But just to get people to understand that it's wrong to dominate both humans and animals. I don't think we get to a state of freedom in either direction. They both have to be done on the aggregate. Thoughts on that?
Well said. And I think part of what keeps people from directly, viscerally understanding it is that they don't have to do the work of actually slaughtering these animals themselves. I think if they did, and we didn't have factory farming practices and just general, big agro practices, and people had to do that for themselves, they would find that they would actually really, the compassion centers in them would be more engaged, because it's very difficult for a person who hasn't been harmed by another life form to take the life of that life form, even if they still believed that it were necessary, which it isn't, we know scientifically that that's the case. If you wean off of a meat diet, because again, you're going to make changes to your physiology by eating meat your whole life. You don't want to just suddenly, put the body into a distorted state, I guess you could say, by suddenly making that change. You want to ramp up. Okay, just like anything else, you consult anybody who knows anything about the physiology of the body, and they're going to tell you avoid very sudden, drastic changes that are going to affect the physiology drastically all at once. We come to a state of homeostatic equilibrium in just about whatever we do, because the body will make adjustments. The whole immune system and the processes of the body are amazing in their ability to adapt. Okay, so they'll adapt to even negative stuff being thrown at it all the time and be used to that. So when you want to change to something that is even more positive, you should do it over a process of time. You shouldn't do it suddenly. I think a lot of people, when they go plant-based or vegan, they try to do it too suddenly, and they find that processes in their body can, go haywire. Then they blame it on that and say, I needed the meat. I get this a lot too. I went to a plant-based diet, never saying anything about how quickly they did it, okay, or about what they ate, right? They just say, I went plant-based. They could have been eating plant-based sugary cookies all day, okay? Yeah. They could have been eating a totally grain-based diet with not a lot of, real phytonutrient nutritions in it, okay? And then they want to say, this caused problems with this organ or this process in my body, because they didn't do the transition to a healthy plant-based diet correctly. And so then they blame it on the plant-based side of things and say, I need meat to maintain optimum health. And it's not true. And it's based on a lot of presuppositions and just wrong ideas about how the science of this works that they didn't come to fully understand by doing proper research.
Yes. Going back to what you're saying about how the adaptable bodies work in there, and if you're in a high quality producing the hemp seed and an eclectic organic plant-based diet,
that's right.
I think you can transition fairly quickly, because your body, it's getting everything it needs. You're feeling full up, but obviously it's not sensible overnight, like you're saying. Mark, do you eat hemp? Do you eat hemp seed?
I do. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's one of my insurance.
I take hemp-based CBD oil every day as well as a supplement, as part of my regimen of tinctures and supplements every morning.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Do you how often
Hemp
do you
seeds,
take
whole
empty?
hemp seeds are excellent too. You could throw them into smoothies or on a salad. It's an excellent nutritional aspect. I'm sorry, say again?
I was just asking you how often you do entheogens. And I know they should be done
Infrequently. So I can't give you any amount of particular time. I don't like maintain any kind of a schedule, but I do not do them very frequently.
when you feel that you need to.
Yes.
A couple of times a year or something.
That's right. And I feel like they should be used when you feel like you need another lesson, when you're falling short in your life. And you should be prepared to hear things that you don't want to hear and see things that you don't want to see. That's what they're for. They can be harsh teachers. Yeah, absolutely. So it's about mental and spiritual preparation, and they are tools to assist that. They're not going to do it for you either. They're going to kind of show you what needs to be done and then drop you back down right on the ground floor and say, now you have to do it. Nothing 100%. Will do it for you.
So,
yep.
It's quite funny. Going back to what you said about the restaurant, that was actually one of the last times I ate in a restaurant. I was just, gorging on all of this meat. It kind of made me realise just the gluttony and that's funny. That's one of the last times I ate meat. Those places helped me change ways.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, it's a whole difference in lifestyle. You could see it come through in just about every way. I mean, you look at where low vibrational energy and what people pay attention to that's low vibrational, and you'll see meat is always associated with it. High density, plant-based nutrition, juicing, smoothies, you're going to see in many cases, not blanket statement, but a higher vibrational state of awareness accompany that. They definitely go hand in hand. So
the shamans don't eat they in those cultures, genetic orientated cultures.
Yes, absolutely. They're more in touch with nature in general and in touch with the land. Yes.
Can I just leave you on another quote, Mark?
Mm-hmm.
Manly P. Hall quote. We shouldn't go through ages of suffering, change through intelligent education.
Say it one more time.
True meaning of the word intelligent.
Say the quote one more time.
It's along the lines of we shouldn't go through ages of suffering. Now I've got it written down. But it basically is saying that we shouldn't keep doing the same thing. We should deal with it properly.
That's right. Learn from our lessons.
Dealing with the cause, the causal factor.
Right. Learn from the lessons of suffering. It doesn't have to be a constant repeated cycle. We can learn the lesson, pick up and move on and learn and grow from that lesson, even if it was a negative lesson. There's no reason to keep repeating those cycles of suffering through continued ignorance. That suffering is often here to teach us a lesson. It's up to us to receive that lesson and acknowledge it and be honest with ourselves. That's what this is all about. Nathan, thank you so much for the call. Thank you for your work, my friend. Really appreciate it. Let's see, who else do we have on the line? Let's go to Bill Church. Bill Church, you're live on What on Earth is Happening. Welcome.
Mark, can you hear me?
I can, coming through loud and clear. How are you doing, Bill?
I'm doing great, brother. Good to speak with you always.
You too, my friend.
I appreciate you doing this show because I've experienced the polarization on this topic, and
I think we all have. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's a journey that I'm on as well. I'm on the trial and error aspect of this. The longest time that I went vegetarian, and I am currently a carnist. Okay, but I see and I know the moral. This is my biggest issue right now, man. It always has been.
So let me just clarify what you just said. You are attempting to go vegetarian right now.
Absolutely, I'm in the process always, dude. And that's that's where I want people to understand in the polarization of this community. We can help each other much more than by doing these vitriol attacks to each other.
I agree.
The vitriolic I've experienced has made me separate myself and come to my own. And the thing is, Mark, is that I juice my own vegetables. I do the hemp seeds. I do everything. I do the tinctures. My wife is a wildcrafter.
Sure.
Okay. And so she's out right now on a nature walk.
Certainly help with it. I mean, you'll be able to get so much benefits and energy from doing something like that. That's a hugely added benefit. Well,
and the thing is that I need help, and I need to find out what is going to work for me.
Sure.
And that's where we can really come together as a hive mind community and say, hey, look, with love, compassion, empathy for each other, there's nothing we can't discuss and there's nothing we can't figure out.
Right. And everybody is at a different stage in that process because we've all been conditioned to believing that it has to be a certain way. It's the same with the control system.
Yeah, well, and look at how we grew up, Mark. And just look at how you were speaking about the Brazilian restaurant that you were at. I mean, these are charged with emotional.
That's right.
Hot buttons that we've grown up with. Like when we go to Thanksgiving dinner, what do we walk in the house and smell?
That's right.
When we go to a barbecue, and even my friends that are vegans and vegetarians, I ask them, does that smell good to you? And they're like, dude, it's amazing.
Right.
I'll
still walk by places that are cooking meat and have to acknowledge that smells good to me. I mean, it's something you don't fully get rid of, But I mean, look at how our families, like my family prepared meat like maybe 6 out of 7 days out of the week.
That's right.
It would be rare when we didn't have a meal containing meat when I was growing up.
That's right.
It just wasn't even considered. It was just thought of as this is just normal. This is just the way that humans eat.
Well. And
things are changing, though. There's so many new options. It's amazing. I mean, in Philadelphia this week, actually, I think yesterday was the last day of it. The previous week from Sunday to Saturday was called Vegan Restaurant Week. And it's amazing how many restaurants serve vegan options in the city of Philadelphia now. And they did a whole week about like having all these restaurants having amazing specials that are just whole plant-based, meals. And, I went to a few of them during maybe 2 or 3 during Vegan Restaurant Week. And the meals that I got, I could barely believe were vegan in some cases. It's like, the measures that they went to prepare meals like this, and make them taste with the flavor profiles as amazing as they tasted. It's like you could just look at this and be like, it's practically a piece of cake to go plant-based in today's world than it was even, 5 to 10 years ago.
That's right. And thank God for that, because, we don't know what we don't know, because like you said, we've had a lifetime of programming, and with this issue, it boils down to respect and self-respect.
That's right.
And what does respect mean?
To take another look.
And that's what we need to do on a daily basis.
Yep.
In my opinion, and what I've stressed is that we have more pressing matters as far as a world as a whole, as far as humans being dominated.
That's right.
And, I loved what you said about the domestication of some of these countries. And that's what I raise to when I have these vitriolic attacks from people is like, I have a gun right now on my hip.
That's right.
I always do. We're working on printing AR-15s because we can.
That's right.
And that's the other pressing issues that I want people to know is like, look at, the sacred masculine, sacred feminine, to me, are just as important, if not more important, because then we claim our right as a human to really navigate and to contemplate and to really get our diets right and to not have that ever-present fear overlying.
That's right. Because
we're being dominated.
We're taking our health into our own hands. We're taking our self-respect. We're taking our self-defense. And that's about taking the whole sovereignty of your own life into your own hands.
That's
we have the full
dude.
power
That's responsibility.
That's right. And we have the full power to do that within ourselves.
That's right. And together as a community, there's strength in numbers. And not only that, but what you teach is that the powers that should not be are unified. And that's what we need to be as a community, is unified. And that's where I'm so happy that you're talking about this. And
so look at this. Look at what's happening right here, right? a person who's transitioned to a plant-based diet is speaking with someone who still considers themselves a meat eater, but is on a trial and error basis attempting to go to a vegetarian diet, eventually probably making your way to a plant-based diet at some future point. But we can have a civil discussion about this process without hating each other, okay?
Right.
There's no judgment here. It's like,
Right.
I
It's my biggest
congratulate
contradiction,
you
dude.
on making a contribution to easing the suffering of animals by even reducing meat consumption and attempting to look at going to a vegetarian option. Congratulations on that. And that's how any vegan / plant-based diet person should look at someone who's contributing less. You're contributing less harm in the world to the animal kingdom. So, I'm going to congratulate you on that and say best of luck in your efforts moving forward in that endeavor. That's what any vegan should do when it comes to reducing harm.
Well, the first thing is I got to say is I realize that, and this is my biggest contradiction that I'm working on. And as soon as I figure it out, I will celebrate it, dude, and I'll let everybody know, that it. But it's that process, like you said. It took you 12 years after, and I've been on the longest span is 8 months, and I celebrate that, dude.
I would never beat anybody up for not getting there fast enough. You know what I'm saying? It's the same thing when it comes to the whole authoritarian approach. As long as somebody's moving in the right direction, okay, I'm still going to try to nudge them further. But hey, just stop advocating for slavery. You know what I mean? It's the same thing with this. Don't advocate for more harm of animals, right? You can move in that direction, and we don't have to beat each other up as long as people are being honest and moving in the right direction. What I get angry about is when people are trying to lie to themselves and others and put out information that is false when it comes to the moral truth about these things. All I'm saying is let's go to the core underlying root moral philosophy, which are called first principles, which are called the principles of natural law. And let's apply them to any given scenario that involves human action. And then make the knowledge-based determination based on morality, based on objective morality, about which direction our behavior should go. That's all I've ever really asked. Why I get so nuts and angry sometimes is because I fully realize many people are not even interested in having that discussion, and they just want to continue to apply a religious belief to their behavior. And all I'm saying is we could not even be in the same place as far as where our behaviors are, but we can have the discussion based on first principles. And as long as we're mutually honest with ourselves and each other in that discussion, there's no need for hostility, regardless, even if people are in two different places, Yeah,
that's how we bridge the gap.
Right.
That's how we make change. And look at the word converse, right? We come together to change.
That's right. To change together. That's right.
And
Bill,
that's what we need to do as a community.
I want to again say thank you for making the effort that you're making, and I wish you the best with it. And if you ever need any advice, help, questions, in whatever way that my experience can help you out, never hesitate to ask personally. I would always help you out as a friend.
Got it, buddy. I'll definitely take you up on that. I love and appreciate you. Thank you for doing the work that you're doing. Thank you for coming back on live. And I can't wait till our paths cross again in the real world, brother.
Bill, thank you, brother. I really appreciate that. Thanks for the great points that you brought up during the call. Excellent. All right, let's see. Who else do we have? Let's go to Carmen Karanji. Carmen, you're live on What on Earth is Happening. Welcome.
Mark, what's up? Am I coming through?
Yes, you are. How you doing, man?
Great, dude. How about yourself?
Good.
Awesome. Dude, it's so nuts. Like, I've been listening to the whole show, and, every time before you call somebody, I wonder if you're going to jump to me. And both times that I've gotten into the show, like the moment before, I feel like I have this like moment of psychic intuition where I'm like, this is it. I'm literally driving in my car. I'm like, this is it. So that's pretty cool. But I gotta say, man, this show and the show before, these topics and the way that you cover it in depth, Nobody has taken this angle when it comes to this very polarizing topic.
Can I comment on that comment briefly? Okay.
Sure.
I have to say, I would really, really love to see more people covering topics and dynamics regarding what's taking place in our world from the moral, natural law, first principle based objective, rather than any other political, worldly, financial, economic. You hear all of this political talk, but so few people go to the moral core or the moral center of something, and so few argue from real first principles. And this is why I, sort of, some people will say, oh, I talk arrogantly about myself. And I say there's nobody out there really covering things like this. But in all honesty, there are so few, you can count them on one hand, So I do listen. I do listen back to some shows to see how I do. And honestly, when I listen back, one of the things I always say, and I know this is going to sound egotistical to people, but trust me, it's not. It's actually something that I consider with somberness and sadness, okay? I hear the job that I do on some of the shows that I do, and I say to myself, why aren't there 100 people or 1,000 people doing this like this and even better? And I can't believe that I'm one of the only people that is covering these topics from the points of view that I cover them from. We need to do better in that sphere. We need to have way more people talking about things from first principles. So, it's not an arrogant or egotistical thing. I'm just being honest that I don't see it that much. But when I hear myself talking about it in these ways, I sort of am like, wow, I did a really great job in covering it from that perspective, which is so lacking in the world. And I wonder why it's lacking. And I realize it's because people really haven't spiritually gone far enough into natural law and moral, true objective morality-based principles, unfortunately, because it's very occulted and hidden from us.
Yeah, it's occulted, but on top of it, they're so used to extravagant rationalizations for things, because that's all we get taught. It's when you're a kid, you do kind of operate from first principle. You're like, you're like, Mom, isn't electricity a renewable resources? Why do we still use gas for cars and stuff? And the mom will come up, she'll try to remember whatever weird explanation that overcomplicates a very simple, thing. and that's what people's modus operandi is. But yeah, let me
ask you something. As a person who's been engaging in a plant-based diet for many years, what is the biggest justification that you hear for people not moving more toward a plant-based diet in your life? What do you hear from people who won't engage this dynamic or just acknowledge that it's a better way to be in the world because it causes less harm, and where they're falling short in even acknowledging that this is true? What's the justifications you hear spouted from people?
It's usually a dead tie between the misinformed people who believe that it's necessary, and it's less of that they believe it's necessary and more that they need it to be necessary for them to justify their behavior. That's what I've noticed.
But that's the biggest one for me. I think more people still believe that human beings must eat meat to be in optimum health. They actually, in the year 2019, with all of the science that has been fully shown, and I posted this book that goes into a lot of the science. I said I wasn't really going to cover it that much on the show. One of the things I want to do when I hang up the call with you in a little bit, Carmen, is I want to show people what I posted with the last podcast, because there's a lot of good educational material there that I think people should go through. And one of them is a book called You Don't Need Meat, by a researcher named Peter Cox. And basically he covers in this book the science that definitively proves that the human physiology does not require animal flesh in the diet, or really any animal products. So you're an athlete. Carmen here, who is helping me with my natural law documentary, he's one of the individuals who is editing it. Carmen is an MMA athlete. Okay, so you participate. Actually in mixed martial arts competitively.
Daily
Okay?
beatdowns.
So think about that, folks. I mean, he's trained in MMA and particularly trained in Brazilian style jiu-jitsu, and he competes in MMA, in the sport of mixed martial arts. And you're a fully plant-based, eating a fully plant-based diet, a vegan.
Yep. And check this out. It actually helps me in a lot of ways. Like, for example, my most recent fight, I got hurt in training camp. I got an actual bruised rib. Like, it was like I would say like 2 pounds per square inch of force away from being a broken or fractured rib. But it was like as bad as you can get without fracturing. And it was like 2 weeks before the fight. But since basically what heals your body is the rate of which you can, get rid of inflammation. Right. When you have a plant-based diet, things like that heal at phenomenally quicker rates. Like, I noticed that when I transitioned, and now like I can rely on it. It's actually, I rely on it as a form of white magic, to be completely honest, to sort of like transcend the injuries I do sustain. Like, you know what I mean? Being a vegan doesn't necessarily make me the best martial artist, so I do take my lumps. But the good thing is, being a vegan allows me to recover from those lumps faster and also not sustain injury. I mean, I don't tear muscles, I don't pull things. Everything is super healthy under the hood. You know what I mean? And that's where it counts.
Yeah. I mean, I think another thing I should have mentioned when it comes to like positive nutrients to put into your body, things that help with inflammation, like turmeric. This is an incredible spice that people should be using for anti-inflammatory, as an anti-inflammatory. And then you mix that with things like black pepper, piperine, and it'll be absorbed into the body even faster and more readily. So, people should look into turmeric formulas, or just buy a bunch of powdered turmeric and encapsulate it, buy vegan capsules and, cap it up and, just take lots of it, because anti-inflammation, inflammation is the source of just about every disease.
Exactly. It's the root cause. And that's kind of like how I like to try and approach veganism. I take the balanced approach, but I also try to almost in a way, like sort of like market it to the individual, in the sense that like, hey, look, this is going to make you feel like 50 times better than however you feel right now if you're a carnist. Like on every level, physically, mentally, and spiritually, your life is just going to glow.
Sure. A lot of people, Carmen, I want to say thank you so much for the call. I'm gonna jump because I want to respond to one thing that you said there, and I'm also going to show people some of the things that I posted with the very last podcast that I put up. So, Carmen, thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. Also, Carmen is going to be one of the co-hosts of Anarchadelphia. We'll be talking more about that conference. I'll be speaking at it here this coming fall in Philadelphia. So, Carmen, thanks so much for the work that you do, and thanks for your contribution to the show today.
Awesome, Mark. Thank you for having me. I can't wait to hear the rest of the show.
You got it. So Carmen brought up a point that, like, when people do transition to a plant-based diet, they do feel more energetic and healthy. And a lot of people will dispute that and say that, like, oh, meat makes them feel better. Okay. Well, here's what happens with meat. It's actually decaying when it's already decayed. When you put a decaying substance in the body, your body releases a lot of things, different types of chemicals, largely from like the adrenal system, that are identifying it as something that is toxic and that is decayed and that doesn't really belong in the body. And that will often give someone an energy boost because of how the internal chemistry of the body is dealing with an internal toxin. And then that is mistakenly identified as giving you energy. Okay, the very small amount of nutrition that's coming from the consumption of meat is coming from the actual plant-based nutrients that make their way from the animal into the flesh of the animal when they consume it. And really, that's getting that secondhand. And it not only like what Nathan Redette said earlier, that the law of correspondence directly related to the moral implications of eating meat. But there's another occult law that many people don't know about because they don't really see it at work in the world enough, is the law of assimilation. This is not what is considered one of the Hermetic principles, but something that is taught in the Rosicrucian tradition and in the Freemasonic tradition. And if you really study the law of assimilation, we realize that in order to get the same thing that we can get directly from a plant-based diet, our body has to work much harder to break down the complexity of animal physiology. That's why that's why most people tend to go on the side of eating herbivores or other beings that are eating a plant-based diet, like chickens, cows, etc. Okay, if you were to choose a carnivorous animal to consume, you'd step up in the law of assimilation another layer of complexity, because that animal is eating often an herbivorous animal in order to get its nutrient requirements met as a carnivore, a nature-based carnivore. Okay, not a carnist, that is not a natural state for a human being to be in. But that natural carnivore is then eating an herbivore in most cases, and then it's having to break that down, and then you're having to break it down. So like in the Rosicrucian tradition specifically, talked about in the book that I posted with the last podcast, this law of assimilation is mentioned, and it's like talks about like that if you were to eat, like a lion, for example, that would probably be like one of the worst meats that you could put into your body for that very reason, because of that occult law of assimilation. So I want to switch over to the computer very briefly. Let me just bring up the page, and I want to show people what I posted in the last podcast. I'm going to go to the podcast page. You could switch over. This is the podcast page for the whatonearthishappening.com website. If you just click the podcast tab there. Okay, this is show number 207. Okay, and this is the description, the date, and the description of the topics. Underneath that, of course, I post with every podcast the related images, okay, that you could download as a zip archive. And then I posted related documents. We had talked a little bit about the Notre Dame event during the burning of Notre Dame during the season of sacrifice. So I posted Fulcanelli's pamphlet called, essay called Mystery of the Cathedrals. And then that post from the person who was a carnist spouting all kinds of inaccuracies about, not eating meat. I posted my PDF document of his Facebook post. But then there's some books. I wanted to just talk about the books that I posted with the podcast very briefly. I posted Natural Cures in EPUB and PDF format. And here's the book I was just talking about, the Rosicrucian Cosmoconception. This is a Rosicrucian text by the occultist, the Rosicrucian occultist Max Heindel. I highly recommend reading this about the differences between the kingdoms of life, namely animals and human beings. It contains information about natural law, morality, the law of assimilation, etc. I'll just briefly show you what happens if you click that. In this case, it just simply downloaded the PDF there. Okay, so some people, it'll come up in their browser, and there might be a browser handler for the PDF, and you can click save or save to disk from there. In my case, that type is set up in my browser preferences to simply download to my downloads folder, which is how I prefer it. Then you can click it from there, and there's the full book, and you can see I can scroll through every single page of the book. It is the full text. Okay. So just showing people, what I'm making available with the podcast. This is only available on whatonearthishappening.com. I generally don't post this to video sharing sites, all of these links. So you would have to go to the podcast page of What on Earth is Happening to get this material. Okay. And then underneath that, next to that, there's a book called You Don't Need Meat. Okay, this is in EPUB and PDF format. This contains a lot of the science that proves that human beings are not carnivorous and can fully sustain their life and energy and health and optimum health with a plant-based diet. You can read about all of those findings there. I posted a link to the Earthlings documentary and that short video clip of the dog helping the fish who was out of water, trying to, push the water over the fish, who unfortunately was probably already gone. And then there are related links. I posted information about reverse osmosis systems, Breville juicers, Vitamix blenders, general juicers and blenders, air fryers, the IntestiCleanse vegan protein powders in 2 different flavors. So you get the idea that there's a lot of supplemental material that gets posted with the podcasts, and I just wanted to show people where they can find that and how they could download that material. So that being said, we could switch away from that, and I'll start moving on to the next caller. All right, let's see. Who else do we have on the line? Let's hear from Patty Lager. Patty, you're live on What on Earth is Happening. Welcome.
Hi, Mark. How are you? Can you hear me
well.
okay?
Yes, I can. Great to hear from you.
Yes, and it was great to hear from my old friend Bill up in Seattle. So hi, Bill. Um, I'm glad you took my call, and I'm so grateful that you are addressing this subject again. I remember, I became an anarchist through veganism, actually.
Really?
When you can, yeah, when you can see that animals are not being treated for what they are, which is like a life, a miracle. That's kind of how I look at it. I'm a biologist, I'm a physiologist. I teach human anatomy and physiology. And I marvel at just the complexity and the biochemistry of everything that goes into making life express itself the way it does. And seeing harm done to that, even at the smallest level, with a little fly, it does it up. It's upsetting to me. So then through that, I realized, well, I guess as a human, I'm being treated that way um, by a power that, I later came to find out were the powers that should not be. And, it just all made sense. It all started falling in line. So it's nice to see that. And I know one thing as I went further and further on my progression along anarchy, it came to find out that not a lot of anarchists saw animals the same way I did. And you were kind of
Yes.
one of the first ones that actually brought that up as, animals should be treated the same way we as humans should be treated, as beings that deserve respect and compassion. And so I want to thank you for doing that.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Patty, let me ask you something. How many years were you eating a plant-based diet before you tied it in with anarchy and then went to an anarchy mindset? How long did that journey take you?
Well, I became a vegan in 2009
Hmm.
after watching Earthlings. I was vegetarian before that, but Earthlings really made me kind of step over to the line of veganism.
It's a
And
tough one. It's a tough one to watch.
yeah,
I mean, I've told people in
it
the
was
past,
heartbreaking.
yeah, I've told people in the past I forced myself to watch it twice because the first time, as visceral and painful as it was, I felt like I needed a little bit more of an urging and a hammering into my psyche of this that's how big of a meat eater I was, how I knew I was attached to it. I knew I was heavily attached to it. And I forced myself to watch it a second time, which was infinitely more painful than watching it the first time. And I won't subject myself to it again. I won't watch it again. So I've seen it
Yeah,
twice, and that's really more than enough. For people who really want to know what really goes on with the suffering of animals, you should make yourself watch the documentary Earthlings all the way through at least once. And it's traumatic. So be
it
prepared.
is.
Yeah.
It really is traumatic. I mean, I still have kind of like, I guess, PTSD imagery from that movie where it just comes to mind and it brings tears to my eyes. But I thought, that was 2009. And then in 2011, maybe 2012, I came across Stefan Molyneux. And then it was in 2013 that I came across you. So yeah, that's when all of the pieces started coming together, that humans, animals were all miraculous beings that are capable of respiration and feeling and sensory perception. So it was just, it all came together at that point.
And we should all be free. I mean, that's what we should
Yeah.
want for all life. It's like this is about freedom, and it's not just about just freedom for us. It's not my freedom. It's freedom with a capital F. Actually, make it freedom with all capital letters. That's what this dynamic is all about. That's what life really is all about, is endeavoring to be more free. And we are more free when we are more moral, when we are doing the least amount of harm. That is what will create the optimum amount of freedom. That's how the laws of reality actually work. That's what natural law is, and that's how it works. And that's why it's so occulted. That's why the occultists of our world do not want us to understand how those laws function. They want to keep that hidden from us at all costs. So, Patty, thank you so much. I mean, is there anything else that you want to bring up or ask? Because I think more people, I think, should be coming to anarchy through veganism. I see more of it happening the other way around. I see the anarchist movement eventually getting to the idea that, that freedom should be extended to all creatures. But I don't see enough, to me, of people in the plant-based food movement recognizing the illegitimacy of government and man's law and seeing that as slavery. I have attended some not meetings, but like events that people in the plant-based community put on and host. I haven't really joined those organizations or go to a lot of their internal meetings. I know people who are involved, and I've gone to some events that they've hosted. And I don't see a lot of people who understand the illegitimacy of government at those. So let me ask you this then, how do you think we can bridge that or add more numbers to the people who are coming over to real anarchy the way you did, by looking at it from the perspective of all beings should really be free, not just humans, but animals as well. And when they're animal activists, they should understand that, the forms of subjugation that humans are subjected to, often like animals, through the slavery called government, should also end. How can we bridge that gap?
Well, I think it's just we need to be more vocal about the truth and who the real threat is. A lot of vegans try to work through the government to create
Yes.
laws that are, giving the chicken a bigger cage, or, giving them a little bit more incremental freedom than they already, are suffering from the lack of. And we have to let them know that it's the government that's the problem. Government is slavery. And if we want freedom for these animals, we also have to look at ourselves, that we are animals enslaved by the same consciousness. And it's a consciousness that's trying to limit us. So I think that the more that we can just speak that truth, the better. And, I do, I've been offline for a while with regards to my own weekly live Q&A. I help people learn about how the human body works with regards to detoxification. And
Excellent.
I've been using your ideas and sharing that with people. And I've been sharing your podcast with them. And people are, they understand it. They have this innate understanding that, we are being controlled, and there is an agenda out there that's limiting our freedoms, and we should question these things. So, it's just slowly we're helping people awaken and become more aware. And that's really what elevating our consciousness is helping us see what we had not seen before.
That's right. And it is a process like any other. I feel like it's not moving fast enough, certainly not for my likes. And I feel a lot of people ignore the truth about it. But that's where our job comes in. We have to be more vocal. Just like you said, we need more teachers of this. One person or even a handful of people cannot do it, folks. That's what the great work is to do. Patty, I want to thank you so much for the call. Brilliant points that you brought up. Always great to hear from you.
Thank you, Mark.
You got it. But Patty's exactly correct. We need more voices. We need more teachers. It's or we're not going to make it. Things are not going to go well. And another thing that she said is, look at how much the government's involved in the suffering of animals. Look at how much they subsidize the meat industry. That's going on, and the dairy industry. That goes on all the time. So not staying silent about this is a huge part of the effort to change it. And this is where, I see every day people patting people on the back, and saying, great job. I keep doing the work that you're doing. And I keep asking, help me. And it's great when people want to contribute and do contribute. That's awesome. We need that help as well. Okay. The best way anybody can help me is to get involved in the great work themselves by developing the courage to speak the truth. That is the absolute best way anybody can make a contribution to this work, because the more people who are speaking the truth, the more we're going to be able to get it out there to all of the people of the world. And that's what really needs to happen, because contrary to popular New Age belief, as I've talked about in my New Age bullshit seminars, for a quantum shift in consciousness to take place on a planet such as ours, with the type of species that we are living on it, numbers are required. It's not something that happens with small groups of people, as many people believe erroneously. We need large numbers of people to tip the dynamics and tip the scales in the opposite direction. That's why it's called a quantum shift, folks. A quantum leap or a quantum shift in consciousness. What is it based on? The word is quantum. That's the word quanta from Latin, which means an amount, a number of something, an amount of something. It's in the very word. A quantum shift means a shift in the amount of people who are doing something or thinking a certain way. You know, this is what people never really make the distinction in language. And they believe this new age variant of what it means for a shift in consciousness to take place. It's, oh, this tiny little group of people is going to drive it. No, it has to be driven by the majority of people for really things to change, for the dynamic to be flipped. And this is what a lot of people don't want to hear. They want to believe this new age notion that like a small sliver of people are going to drive all this change. It never has worked that way, and it never will. People can influence that change, but the change doesn't take place until most people are doing it, until the majority of people have actually converted that into real world action. That's when the change actually takes place. You can argue about how much small groups of people will influence something. Like that's why I continue to do what I do. People will say, what difference can one person make? A lot. But guess what? A whole lot of people driving that dynamic can make it happen a whole lot faster. And right now, we're really playing beat the clock. Okay? If you don't think that, you're not paying attention. We don't have an unlimited amount of time to change the dynamic that's taking place on this planet. Okay? Because evil can and does win, and destruction can and will occur. You know? And if you don't believe that nature has a tipping point itself, where it says this far and no further with this species that's causing this chaos here, well, I mean, you're very naive about how nature works and how eventually it takes things into its own hands. And when it decides to do that, humanity will not stand against that force. Okay? So we need to have an adult, grown-up understanding of how those nature forces work. Let's see, who else do we have? Let's go to Ivan from Phoenix. Ivan, you're live on What on Earth is Happening. Welcome, my friend. Ivan, are you there? You are unmuted at the server end. Make sure you unmute your microphone. Ivan from Phoenix. All right, I'll try to come back to you. All right, let's go to, let's see. Let's go to Essence of Anarchy. Essence of Anarchy, you are live on What on Earth is Happening. Welcome.
Hey, thanks, Mark. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
All right. Well, I'm pretty much in the same boat as old Bill Church there.
Okay.
Still eat meat, trying to work on making the transition. Haven't seen Earthlings yet. How long was it between when you saw Earthlings and stopped eating meat?
I think I saw Earthlings the year that it came out, which, if I'm not mistaken, was either 2006 or 7. It was definitely before I became a vegan and before I became a vegetarian in the year 2007. So I'm assuming Earthlings came out at least maybe 1 or 2 years before that. I don't want to definitively say. Maybe my producer might be able to look it up and just tell me. But I saw it, I guess, around late 2006, early 2007, if I recall correctly. And I went vegetarian in April of 2007. So I have been vegetarian now for over 12 years. Okay. Earthlings was the year 2005, I'm being told. Okay. So 2005 Earthlings came out. I saw it in mid to late 2006. And then I decided in early 2007 that I was going to give vegetarianism a try. And I started attempting to become vegetarian by weaning off of meat in early 2007. it took me 4 months to make this decision that I was no longer going to consume meat and I was going to be vegetarian from that point forward. And I never looked back after about April of 2007. So last year was my 12-year anniversary of being vegetarian. I struggled with going fully vegan and attempted it and kind of like fell back on just plain vegetarianism for about 12 years. And last year in mid 2008, so it's been, we're coming up on almost a year. I think like at the very beginning of the summer around June, I decided to be fully vegan. So, in a couple months, about 10 months, I've been fully vegan, fully plant-based diet. So less than 1 year for me, about 10 months fully plant-based.
Okay. Well, yeah, I plan on watching that movie pretty soon. And even as someone who still eats meat, the message that you've given over the last 2 weeks is so easy to understand. And I don't see how anybody could argue with it.
That's all I'm asking is to hear the argument from the objective moral standpoint in natural law. That's it. Then let's be honest regarding that. And then we could talk about where we are all at in that process or not involved in it. And that's all. Like, it doesn't have to be this war between us. It's like, okay, you're still eating meat. We're having a civil conversation and you acknowledge the moral aspect of it and understand that you could change your behavior to do less harm. And as long as we have that basic understanding, then you can make the determination of how you're going to proceed. I'd like to even just see that in the whole political sphere, to help people to understand, hey, if this is really slavery and government is really slavery, what can we do to try to work toward eliminating it? Just like how can we wean our way off of doing harm to animals and eventually not do harm to animals? They're living their lives. They don't want to be harmed or killed, just like we're living our lives and we don't want to be harmed or killed. It's very simple to understand from a moral perspective, but here's the key. If we're being honest with ourselves, we just need t-shirts made with that on it. If we're being honest with ourselves, because the word if needs to be the largest word, because that's what it's really all about. It's like,
definitely.
Yeah. So I want to just thank you for your honesty, right? Thank you for your self-respect regarding your honesty, even though you're still eating meat. We can have a mutually respectful conversation because we're both being honest with ourselves. And that's all I ask anybody to do.
Oh, yeah, exactly. And like I mentioned on the last time I called, I got a radio show in town. And since that last call, I've been talking a lot about these sort of things on my show and talking to friends of mine around town about freedom of humanity and truth. And people are so hard-headed. There's people that I've considered, decent people and I've liked for a long time and they just can't hear it, it seems like.
Yep.
And it's like,
it's religion. Let's be honest. It's religion. This is why I call religion the one and only problem, because all incorrect forms of thought that we can't let go of are religions that are holding us back, binding us to the lie and tying us back, holding us back from getting to the truth, which will actually help improve the human condition. It's all religion that does harm,
Right. Oh, yeah.
Again, as I've said in the past, a quote that people have made into an internet meme is, I've said, we need to, as human beings, stop trying to make our religion the truth and start making truth our religion,
Yeah, that's definitely true. And I got 2 quick things before you move on to the next caller.
Sure.
I do a lot of gardening, and just growing your own plants seems so important too. And especially when you consider industrial agriculture. And just looking at the face of it, it's bad. Especially I was looking at a Google Earth shot the other day and you see all these farms and it looks like a low resolution digital photograph. So but so many animals get harmed in the runoff and in the giant combine harvesters that growing your own food, even if you do still eat meat, that can help lower the amount of suffering.
Sure. And we could keep it local. You're using the local nutrients. it's another thing is like, I have a few things to say about this, because I have to be honest with myself and with other people. I haven't really done much in this sphere because of how busy I am with what on earth is happening. I have a little bit of land that I could use to plant some food out in my backyard. And it's a very small amount comparatively, but in South Philadelphia, it's actually like considered a large backyard. Okay. So, but I don't really have the experience, the know-how. I have not really tried my hand much at gardening, a little bit, a very little bit, but I'm beyond, quote, pun intended, I'm beyond green regarding gardening. Okay. And I don't have the green thumb, so to speak. I could use help with that, and it's like, I want to learn more about that and practice it. But like, it's like most of my time is consumed with this. I don't really have the time to dedicate to that here because I do this type of work. This is one of the things that if I didn't have to do this type of work, if I wasn't like morally obligated and forced to do this type of teaching, because if it was just common sense knowledge, I wouldn't have to spend my time doing this and my resources doing this. I would take up two things. The two things that I would want to devote more time and energy to would be creative efforts and nurturing efforts. I would want to get involved in more art. I love music and have done that form of art, but I would want to get more involved in actual different forms of art, like drawing, painting, a digital artwork, etc. And I would want to get more involved in gardening, learning how things optimally grow, planting food for myself, etc. And these are things that I just have not had the time in life to dedicate more time and learning to, because of the nature of the work that I do with teaching natural law and morality. That's one of the reasons I wish humanity would get past this silly stage and condition that it's in by believing in false religion and turning that into hardened cult belief systems, and then my time would be freed up to do more things like that. But at some point, maybe I should try my hand at it here at some point in the future, because it definitely is probably something that's also mind centering, like a meditative exercise.
Very therapeutic.
Yeah, right.
And I was glad you mentioned old John Kohler the other day, because not only does he have a good juicing channel, he's got a great channel about growing your own greens.
Excellent. The dude's great. He's got a great attitude. I love his information, so I highly recommend people check him out. And also Dan McDonald helped me a lot with, green juice recipes, made a lot of those, did a lot of good for my health. So I think people should check him out as well. And again, to me, the king of juicing was Jay Kordich. I grew up watching his stuff and just learned so much about what to do with juicing from Jay Kordich. I didn't link to them in the last show. I probably should definitely link to some of their videos or their basic channels on this with this podcast for sure. So thanks for bringing them up.
Oh yeah, and I've got a juicer and I've done some juicing, but I definitely want to get more. And there's a bunch of good resources on the internet because gardening doesn't have to be expensive or hard necessarily. There's a lot of good tips and tricks to make it cheap and easy.
Sure. I do have a little bit, believe it or not, a small amount, not in any way any kind of an expert. My grandfather was a carpenter. He was kind of like a master carpenter. And he taught me a little bit. I have a minor amount of carpentry skill. I just helped a friend build some wood-based garden beds that she's going to be has a lot of land and is going to be growing a whole lot of food out in her outdoor garden. And I showed her how to replicate the work that I did, basic woodwork to make basic garden beds. And, that's the extent that I've gotten involved in the last, little while in helping with gardening. So.
Oh, well, that's a good start too. I mean, help out a gardener. They'll probably give you some produce.
That's right. Yeah. That's kind of like, what the implied agreement was. So, hopefully that'll come to fruition at some point.
Well, and then I got one last question, but you can shut me off after that and go to the next person. What do you think about the health effects, good or bad, about fermented foods like kombucha or kimchi, that sort of thing?
It's another oversight on my part that I really should have talked about and really given some visual images regarding. You cannot underestimate how important fermented foods, fermentation in general, is in the human diet. It totally activates positive gut health, which is where all the immune system really is starting at, is with, you know, the health of the digestive system. And kombucha, I drink as much as I can. I was brewing it on a daily basis. You know, I haven't done that recently. You know, Barb is still does kombucha brewing and gives me kombucha from time to time. My assistant Leah does kombucha brewing and gives it to me from time to time. I buy it in store as well. But if you can make it yourself, that's the best way to do it. And it comes out the strongest and the most health beneficial that way, especially if you get a really good, healthy colony. So definitely I advocate for drinking and brewing your own kombucha. And just any type of fermented foods, making your own fermented pickles, making fermented beets. I drink beet kvass sometimes. I like sauerkraut. I mean, making your own sauerkraut, you know, cabbage is just so healthy.
Oh,
yeah. It's just one of the most, for the gut, for anything in the gut, stomach, intestines, the whole digestive system, juicing cabbage is unbelievable. But fermenting sauerkraut to make, fermenting cabbage to make sauerkraut, you should definitely get into that as well. Very easy to do, very inexpensive, and the health benefits are through the roof. So fermented foods, I absolutely advocate.
All right, I'm glad to hear that because I love fermenting things.
Yes.
But when you mentioned about meat fermentation causing all the effects in the body, that was just meat-based.
Yes, exactly.
Okay. All right. Well, thanks for talking to me, Mark. I'll talk to you later and keep having a great show.
Thanks so much for the call. I really appreciate it. All right. Okay. All right. Let's go to One Way C. Gratitone, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. You're live on What on Earth is Happening. Welcome.
Greetings, Mark. Thank you so much for taking my call. It's one Y.
Okay.
WEYE, like IC stands for creates in gratitone. It's this tone of gratitude. So
excellent.
Much appreciate you taking the call, my friend. We've never met. I've been wanting to be in touch with you for a long time. I've got like a list of 10 questions here I want to ramble through, but
okay.
The most important one that I think comes to my mind is, have you ever considered, if the financial component was taken care of, doing a tour of some sorts and like coming around to all around everywhere that listens to your podcast? And if we can gather enough people in any given area, is that something that you would be open to entertaining the idea of?
Well, I appreciate you asking and bringing up this dynamic. I have sort of come to not really relish traveling, unfortunately, because of how much harassment is involved with it, whether in any capacity. And I understand that is partially like giving in to what they want, which is for people not to travel. But I so dislike travel, and I used to love traveling. I used to just get in my car and drive sometimes, and just wherever I ended up, you know, just stay there, not for long periods of time, but just like, you know, take a whole day and just wherever I drove and experienced what it was like there for a little bit, you know. And now I won't even do that because of how much harassment's involved, even with driving with these scumbag road pirates, you know, all over the roads. It's just disgusting in the United States. It just all they do is harass working class people. That's all they do. Just endless harassment to try to extract money from them because they're just scumbag pirates of the modern crown called the government. And these people are just trash. They're just trash whose parents were trash. That's all they are.
There's a silver bullet, though. Anytime one of these people engage with you, there's a silver bullet. All you got to say is, I'm sorry, I don't speak legal. Here's my lawyer. Have a nice day. And just let them go back to the little computer, type in whatever that means. And generally speaking, they leave you alone. It's something I found to be successful. So that's something for everybody to go out there and try. Please give it a shot because it's absolutely wrong.
I mean, some people may, some cops may do that, but I'm not going to give that. I wouldn't say that as advice, because some don't care what happens to them and believe they're God and above any repercussions. And in many cases, the cities they operate out of are that corrupt, and they'll get away with killing people. That's how corrupt it is in many cities,
Certainly, always be conscious of your time, and is the right thing at the wrong time is the wrong thing. Right. I always say, just be conscious. Every case is different. I'm not giving any blanket statements. I'm just saying, know yourself enough to at least come from that position of this is an adversary. And it is an adversary. It's the art of war. That's these people's Bible.
To go back to what I was saying about traveling, I would love to have a quote unquote tour regarding this material, just in general, what I talk about on What on Earth is Happening, or like a natural law course tour. Okay. But at this point, what I would quote require to do that would be some form of a private mode of travel provided for me on the ground, because I'm no longer going to take buses, trains, planes. I don't want to travel in any capacity with anyone who is providing a service of travel, because of what they quote subject you to and consider you to be a subject of. So I don't want to use any public transportation services for any reason anymore. So if someone were to say, I'll arrange a tour with a tour bus or private tour bus driver, I might consider something like that, but it would have to be very much talked about and arranged specifically beforehand. And I know that sounds almost diva-ish, but I'm done making my own travel arrangements for myself, and I'm done taking public transportation anywhere.
It's absolutely true. I mean, security first always. That's how we operate. So that leads very nicely into my second question, which is, when is the best time for you and I to be able to discuss some things off the air?
Well, I mean, you could contact me by email and let me know what you want to talk about. I don't necessarily, can't always make time for things like that privately because of how many people want to do that. But, let me know what you want to talk about, and I could consider that. The other aspect of travel I want to briefly mention, since you brought it up regarding this, is the non-reciprocity of defending yourself with a firearm anywhere you travel within the United States. That's why I don't really want to leave the borders of my state anymore, because who dares to tell me I can't defend myself with a firearm? I can't carry it over an imaginary line. I don't want to disarm to travel throughout the country because there's no reciprocity to carry a firearm anywhere I want it in the country. First of all, I shouldn't need any permit to carry a firearm like I do here in Pennsylvania. Every state should be a constitutional carry state without any question.
Absolutely. I mean, the state did not create my right to defend myself.
You got it.
At all, ever. And, that's the whole thing that I was speaking with my friend about this past week. He said, you don't have rights, you are rights.
They're part of our inherent natural makeup, because we are part of the universe and the rights are embedded in the universe. They cannot be ever separated from us. We can only develop the cult religious belief that is possible to do. And people believe that cult belief, unfortunately. Yeah. Right.
Absolutely. And I had a meditation the other day, and I'm really curious about your thoughts about this. On what level is the top of that G encompass, that Masonic symbolism? Is there a level where that stands for gratitude on the light side? It's a duality to that?
Yeah, I haven't heard that specifically expressed in the Freemasonic tradition, but it is something I would most absolutely include in the meaning of the G in the middle of the compasses and square, along with many other things like the generative principle, which is care. I mean, care and gratitude often go hand in hand. I mean, I wake up in a state of gratitude for at least knowing what I know, that I'm not one of the mindless golems of the world, At the same time, then that puts me in a position where, I don't like the human condition or the pain that it causes to even be here amongst people who are so unconscious, you know? So it's like it's a dual thing when it comes to whether I feel grateful or bitter regarding the state of the world. I feel grateful regarding the state of myself. I often feel bitter regarding the state of the world, as I think that's easily understandable. But I would definitely say that the G in the compasses and square in Freemasonry could represent a state of gratitude, because I think if we have gratitude about what we have developed in ourselves, that the universe will provide more for us to continue to go to the next level. I think gratitude that's part of what is called in spiritual teachings the law of allowing. It's part of the law of attraction. It goes hand in hand with it. So you have to express gratitude for what the universe has revealed unto you that you have come to understand and integrate into yourself. And that state of gratitude will bring on the next benefit, the next state of bountifulness, of abundance.
Right. Absolutely. And so, thank you so much for that.
Sure.
I mean, I've got part of my path has been to ultimately recognize the self as a synonym for gratitude. I don't know,
Excellent.
that takes a minute to realize, but I mean, every time I refer to I've trained myself to be grateful for this moment to the best of my ability every single time.
And that's
That
why they
awareness
call
becomes
that's why they call the moment the present. You know, it's a gift, and
or
we should be
presence.
grateful for it.
Presence
Right, yes,
and present
that's right.
tense.
That's right. And that could be multiple gifts. So, excellent point. This is about present moment awareness. It's a topic that's been very important here on What on Earth is Happening. So, thank you for that.
Hey, it's an honor and a privilege.
Sure.
So, would you think it's a good thing for there to be some form of codification to natural law? In other words, on a first principles, just basic first principles level.
Trying to write down the totality of it probably would not be a good idea. I think it's best expressed through the oral tradition personally, which is why that's been the medium for my expression of it. I think that's how it's always been taught, because it has to be communicated, I think, through vibratory energy, not written language. Personally, this is my personal take on it. And I think that's what resonates with the heart-based intelligence the most, is when you hear it spoken. So I don't think there's strict and rigid codification rules like laws that could be written down. As I've often said, natural law is written on the human heart, and it's written in nature. So,
if it could be something that, if it could be something that the individual would be able to manifest for themselves, literally take it, write it on a piece of paper, and they put their mark on it. And now it's there. Because think about how many people operate having never signed their quote unquote constitution.
I would say you just write it as 2 words. You write it as 2 words then. Don't steal. That's the simplest and easiest and best expression of natural law that I've ever personally heard. And it sums it all up. That's what we're here to learn. We're here to learn. Don't take that which does not belong to us. That's what every natural law transgression is, ultimately a form of theft. So just don't take that which is not your property to take, and we'll be okay. We continue to want to engage in acts of theft, we're going to learn the lesson the very, very, very harshest way imaginable. So thank you.
We have to admit that this will be my last. This will be my. So we have to admit that this entire system largely exists as a fiction, right? I mean, it's pretty much just a story that we're all telling each other, and
believing almost entirely,
and believing religiously.
Yep.
So I think that this is it's a very destructive story we're telling each other. So my question is, isn't it possible that there could be a more constructive story that we could come to that would be cohesive enough to be codified in some way, and then just be the rules of how the games would play? And I'd love to take this conversation off there, Mike. Mark, thank you so much.
You got it. I definitely think it's possible. I would lean more toward not being too codified structurally with it. I think all the things we've talked about here since day one on What on Earth is Happening is that story, is the new story, is the new better way of being in the world. And that could be added on to, and we could refine it. We could look into the details endlessly. Certainly the story that we're telling ourselves now, which is a gigantic lie, is very destructive and does need to come to an end by us not speaking it anymore and keep telling other people that it's true and supporting it. And there is a better story for humanity. We have to learn what that is and then teach it to others, and that's what natural law is all about. So thank you so much for that call. Great points. Let's go to, let's see, who else do we have here? Let's go to, Mr. Miller. Mr. Miller, you are live on What on Earth is Happening. Welcome.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, I can, loud and clear.
Hey, how you doing? Thank you for taking my call and everything that you do. The last caller, he brought up some good points about you are rights rather than you have rights. That's kind of an interesting concept.
Since rights are embedded into the fabric of creation and we are part of that fabric of creation, how could they ever be separated? That's what the word inalienable means. Incapable of being alienated or separated from something.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I like the way that's put, or the way that his friend put it.
Mm-hmm.
Another comment would be that the G, you said the generative principle.
Yes.
How about generosity?
Excellent. I mean, that's another thing, that goes hand in hand with the law of attraction and allowing. We have to be willing to give in order to receive. When you put energy out, energy comes back, So it's all about that positive and negative polarity flowing circularly. It's a circuit, So yeah, it's generosity and gratitude. Absolutely. And that's why I'm so thankful for the generosity that's been shown here. And I consider that comes back as a result of my generosity to put out this information largely for free. Only asking for donations to continue to support the efforts and, then step up the production quality, which obviously has been done here on What on Earth is Happening and will continue to be done. And that's, why I always want to try to keep moving it forward. It's about, it's an evolutionary process to move it forward and step it up to higher levels and reach new people, So it's all part of generosity and gratitude. The great points that you guys are bringing up, especially even in relation to that, people may not think that relates directly to what we're talking about here with a plant-based diet, but it absolutely does, because we should be thankful for all the generosity that the earth, the bountiful nature of all the plant-based nutrients that the earth gives to us. It's like this sustains our life, and we should be very thankful for that. So, great point. I don't know if I've lost him. You still there? Sorry. Somehow you were muted accidentally. I'm sorry. You still there? No, maybe we did actually lose him. Well, I apologize for that, but excellent point regarding gratitude that you brought up there. So thank you for that. Let's see. Let's go to Dutch Patriot. Dutch Patriot, you are live on What on Earth is Happening. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for taking my call.
Absolutely.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Loud and clear.
Okay. I hear a lot of good points on the legal side, and a lot of people are thinking that you have rights when you fulfill your privileges. But then the first question I ask is, what is a country? A country is nothing than a religion. So, if we embed all the people with passports, a country called America or the Netherlands or whatchamacallit, the country you're living in, then we fulfill the obligations, or we give the government the power to give. So we already have them. We don't have privileges before we have our rights. Governments are built on our consent. And
ostensibly, yes, they ostensibly are. But if we really strip away, the legalese and the implications, if you really look at it without the violence, the force backed by violence, it ceases to be a government, and it's simply a cooperative effort. So this is why I recommend Larkin Rose's book, The Most Dangerous Superstition, because in it he very clearly defines the characteristics that are necessary for something to truly be considered a government. When it comes to country versus nation or nation state, I also make the delineation that one could look at the term country to simply mean the land and the people living on it, which is why we just had different names for different geographical regions, where certain people with a certain cultural way of being in the world were living together with each other. So I look at, I see that you have the word patriot in your name, and people have often criticized me for using the word patriot, but I think there's a true meaning of the word patriot, and then there's false definitions and ways of seeing the word patriot that a lot of people graft onto and think there's only one meaning of it. And It's like, a false patriot is like one who just believes in his nation state's laws and ways of doing things, whether they're moral or immoral, and supports it no matter what they do. But a real patriot supports the people and the land that the people are living on, and wants it to be moral, and puts his or her entire effort behind supporting the freedom of the people in that geographic region by teaching them to become more moral and better people. And that's why I consider myself a patriot of the quote country or land that I am living in and the people that I am surrounded by, whether they even understand what I'm talking about or not. It's like I'm still going to do the work to try to teach them and uplift them in consciousness. So, that's my definition, or the way I see country and patriot. So, thanks for bringing that up. And I think I kind of made the distinction or the delineation of where I see those terms, but you can continue.
Patriotism and anarchy, it has both the same stigma on definitions,
Yes.
The
many
duality
people,
in it.
Yeah, they don't understand what they really mean. They have their own connotative definition for those terms, absolutely.
But getting back to the corporate country illusion is that, I've noticed that all countries are just like corporations, and not just like, they are just corporations. And what people need to understand is that, we're all playing checkers on a chessboard.
Yeah, right now that's a good analogy of what's going on. Like, people are not understanding the complexity of what's really taking place and are looking for very simple, they're seeing it from a very simplistic perspective instead of understanding how really far down the path toward evil and enslavement we have really descended. And our masters are playing that game of chess where we're barely playing the game of checkers as a people.
And we just keep on playing the game checkers.
Yeah. Yep. Where we have to become...
That's just terrible.
Yeah, we have to become the same chess masters that our masters are, and understand the game that is being played on us. We haven't even sat down at that board yet. I think those are great points that you brought up, Dutch Patriot. Thank you so much for the call. And he's right. We're not getting how far psychologically advanced the people who are really controlling us are, and all the different dynamic components that they put together in that game of control. And I think food is one of the biggest. What we put into our body is going to inform our brains and our mind and become an integral part of how we think and ultimately then how we behave. You want that to be optimum. You want that to be as clean as possible. You want to be that as nutrient dense as possible. That's part of self-respect. That's part of building a better body, which ultimately is building a better brain and ultimately building a better spirit, And it all plays in to this. Nutrition plays into one of the lowest base building blocks, the foundational building blocks of everything that we build up on top of it. And so few people think of it that way. The old adage, you are what you eat, is literally true. It's not just a metaphor. It's literally true, because it becomes your brain, your body, and ultimately your behavior. So great point there. Let's go to Lioness. Lioness, you're live on What on Earth is Happening.
Oh, hey, welcome. Mark, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Welcome to the show.
Oh, awesome. Thank you. Thank you for having it. for me, becoming a vegetarian, which was long time ago, and I'm not right now, was a trip that I made to the Atacama Desert. And for some reason, I came back from that freaking mountain a vegetarian and completely changed. It was a frequency thing. It was weird. It was really, really weird.
So you didn't make the conscious decision? You
Nope.
felt like it was something that you just had to do after literally being in a physical location?
Yep.
Wow.
I came back down from that. How high? So the Atacama Desert is in Chile. It's a very, very strange place, and it's the driest place on Earth. There's this salt deserts. There are volcanoes. It's an extraordinary place, and they eat meat because they don't have much. So they have llama, and they have tomato and rice and the meat. The food was very, very, very simple, and that's all they had.
Not a lot grows in that vicinity because of how arid
desert.
it
No,
is.
there's nothing. They don't even have. When I was years ago.
Who knows? I mean, maybe a place like this is what certain people called an energy vortex. And who knows what certain places how they could affect consciousness. You know, some things are more dense energy points, like could be at a chakra or meridian line of the earth. You know, I definitely think that there is such a thing as energetic frequencies that flow in certain areas of the earth. And this is what was known in the occult sciences as the study called geomancy, understanding the energy flow and grid patterns of energy of the earth. And a lot of occultists have worked with that type of, geomagnetic energy. So who knows? It maybe very well could have affected your physiology and or mindset. Oh,
totally. No, I came back. I mean, how old was I when I went? I was about 25, 24. And I was shooting a show there, and I was there a month. And it was weird because on the way there, I read this book, and I forgot the book, but it was kind of like actually a very esoteric book, and it talked about all these things that I was not really in. I mean, my mother was, and I mean, I couldn't take it or leave it. I mean, I was just 24. I was just living my life, but when I came back, I mean, my frequency had changed so much that I could not eat the meat. Like I could not eat red meat. I could not. My thinking completely changed. I completely started seeing things in a different way. My dreams changed, my visions changed. I mean, I just changed. It just completely changed me. And I was thinking of vegetarian for 12 years.
How did your body and physiology react to the sudden change? Was it like, did it go through a process of adjustment?
No, it was like a fish to water, really.
Wow.
It was not. It was not traumatic. There was no of course, our environment back then, it was not as toxic as it is now. So I imagine it would have been different. But over there, it was like, it was just like a click, really. And I remember distinctly the volcanic and the masculine and the feminine. There was something there. What you're saying is correct. I mean, there was something there, right? And I remember the frequency of the volcanoes, and then going higher even. So it took us, we were at a certain altitude, and then we went even higher. Also, there was no electricity. There was only electricity from like 8 o'clock to 10 o'clock or something, like 2 hours a day, right?
Many indigenous places like that don't have electricity still. I've talked about on the show in the past how much of the earth population still doesn't even have electricity or even, indoor plumbing. They don't have water or toilets running into their home. It's amazing how much of the earth still lives like that. Probably over 50% still of people don't have access to electricity and running water. It's unbelievable that we're living in what we consider the modern day, in modern times, the technological age, and over half of the human population still lives in what we would consider a primitive, technologically absent state,
Yeah, but the lack of electricity really does something to you.
Oh, like, sure.
Yeah, when you've noticed when there's an outage.
Sure.
there's like a silence all of a sudden. I don't know.
We're
Are you
surrounded. We're surrounded by electromagnetic fields that are just all running through us. Absolutely, because the whole AC current system that Tesla, helped invented and helped basically get wired to all of our homes. Was not meant to be the end of how we would power devices. There would be new, cleaner ways of doing it, and those innovations are largely blocked in the modern world.
Yeah, he was working on that. He had two ways of doing it. He was pulling it out of one of the levels of the atmosphere, and then also from the magnetic field of the Earth.
Sure.
So you're absolutely right. And have you heard of the Lily wave? Do you know what that is? So there's and I forgot his name, but there is some physicist that invented a way to put on top of the electric currents a wave that would affect your emotions. It's kind of like TV, like programming. And so, they can ride an emotion like anger or, on top of the electric
other
impulse.
Things that would act as a carrier frequency.
Check it out.
That's what these cell towers are. They're like carrier frequencies, and they can piggyback other frequencies on top of them. Absolutely.
So, it's called the Lily wave, this thing. Anyway, another thing I wanted to bring out that you just floored me, because I've never heard anybody else say it but me, which is eating the sun, what I call eating the sun.
Yes.
And you said it, and I can't believe you said that, because nobody's ever said
when I drink juices, especially green juices or like maybe a good citrus juice, I drink it and I am sitting there thinking, this is consuming literally sunlight converted, stepped down from its pure form into a vibratory frequency of a liquid that came through that plant that then you are drinking to nourish your cells, and you are literally drinking the sun. I mean, that's how powerful juicing is. For those who haven't done fruit and vegetable juicing, if you haven't experienced drinking a glass of freshly juiced fruit and vegetable juice and just feeling what that does to your physiology, it's unbelievable. It's just unbelievable.
Yeah. And so, and also getting in the sun directly, like we don't get out in the sun enough. Like they try to tell us that the sun is bad, but it's so
I'm guilty
of
that opposite. Myself, because I do so much technological work indoors. Unfortunately,
you gotta, I make a point to go outside and just take all your clothes off and go in the sun. Yeah, all your skin, everywhere.
Brilliant points. Thank you so much for the call, for bringing that up.
Wait. Let me blow your mind with one more thing.
Sure, go ahead.
So you were mentioning gardening.
Yes.
My theory, so I love gardening. Okay, that's one of my big things. And I have this theory that the plants, if you give them your DNA, and that's easy with hair or whatever, spit on it, whatever, it will make stuff for you specific to you DNA.
Interesting.
Just wanted to blow your mind with that. That's something that I also don't hear anybody say that.
Now, like, in what way? Like specifically, like for things that you need?
Specifically grow according to what you need.
Interesting.
Yeah. Think about that. Okay, I'll let you go.
that did kind of blow my mind.
I know.
Yeah, very interesting. And I don't dismiss that. I think that is quite possible, because there's so much intelligence that underlies nature through the plant kingdom that without a doubt, when they that I would say that the earth has that ability to sense what we need and adapt to it and provide that for us. That's how intelligent the earth is. That's how intelligent the whole living dynamic system that we are all living within. That's how intelligent it is. So that's a very good point that you brought up. I just want to say regarding what she said regarding frequency, this is all part of nutrition. This is all part of detoxification. We not only should be filtering our water and eating as clean food as possible, but we should be looking at the types of electromagnetic frequencies that we are exposing ourselves to. And we should also be looking at the types of information that we expose ourselves to. That's part of nutrition. These are all stressors of the body, and it's like that's why, like, adaptogens are so important. Some of us have a more innate, inherent, strong physiology that can adapt to things like that. Some of us are far more sensitive to that, and are very easily affected by different frequency fields, etc. I find myself on the former end of that spectrum where, I mean, something has to be overtly beating on me for me to practically sense it. I have a high threshold for things. I have a high threshold for pain. I have a high threshold for, being able to feel subtle energies, okay, like frequency fields, etc. I'm not what you would call an electromagnetic sensitive that you could tell if a cell phone is on in a room or something to that effect. I almost have a thick skin when it comes to that type of stuff. And maybe it's because I've worked in the technology field and been exposed to it. And it's like your body gets tempered in some ways, but that doesn't mean it's not doing harm on a subtle level. So we have to look at all of those dynamics when it comes to being in positive health. It's all part of, quote, nutrition, of what's coming into our physiology, period. And again, that has to do with, what we take into our minds as well. What are you paying attention to? What are you watching? What are you reading? What are you listening to? I had a conversation with a family member in the past where, we were talking about trying to mitigate the effects of diabetes. And I was talking to the person about like what to do regarding diet. But then when I got, and the person was very receptive to that aspect. But then when I started talking about, well, it's not just about what you put in your mouth through your diet. It's also about what you take into your body and mind in other ways. What are you paying attention to? What are you listening to? What type of media, are you taking in, And when I got to that, they didn't want to hear it because they just wanted to continue to think it's only just the physical stuff that you put into your body through food. And it's not. It's about other stressors as well. And most people don't take any of that non-physical stuff into consideration, and we need to. So great points brought up in that last call by Lioness. Thank you for that. Let's see. Let's go to Lucid Nebula. Lucid Nebula, you are live on What on Earth is Happening. Welcome to the show.
Hello?
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Loud and clear.
Shoot. I'm not being able to hear you.
Okay. Let me try to...
Let me take off this real quick. Try that real quick. Does that work?
Can you hear me?
Mark?
Yes. It looks like you're having a problem.
I cannot hear you.
Okay, I'm gonna jump. Unfortunately, it looks like he's having a problem with his speakers or headset, unfortunately. So I apologize for that, having to jump. But if you get that cleared up, I'll try to go back to you. Let's see. Can I go back to Ivan from Phoenix? Let's see if Ivan is there. I'm going to try him again. Ivan from Phoenix, you are live on What on Earth is Happening. Welcome. Looks like Ivan is still having a problem this week. Sorry about that, brother. Let's see. Let's go to... Who else do we still have? Let's go to... Ethan Strawn. Ethan Strawn, you're live on What on Earth is Happening. Welcome.
Mark, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Loud and clear.
Excellent. Man, I got so much that I could say. Just a little quick note on what Lioness was saying about the plants producing specific compounds and stuff for your DNA. I'm wondering if she read the book Anastasia, because that is something that I got out of that book when I was reading it a couple years ago. But interesting concept. If you check it out, it's a good read.
Okay.
Yeah, Ringing Cedars of Russia series, and the first one is called Anastasia. I won't go into any details about that because it's a little off topic. But anyway, thanks for taking my call.
Sure.
It's been a little while. So I got a couple notes here. First, I just wanted to mention, because we're on this topic of carnism, and by the way, thank you for speaking about it in the way that you do. I think it's really needed, as you know, and
thank you.
At some point I intend to get into that as well. So when I was really young, like way back as far as I can remember, before, probably prior to the age of 6 even, I distinctly remember being really disturbed when I came to the realization or found out that people kill and eat animals for food. That just really bothered me. Instinctively, intuitionally, that really bothered me.
I think almost all of us are as children, because when we first are being given foods that are animal based, we don't really directly make that association when we're very young. And then at some point when we reach the age of being able to reason that out for ourselves, or being told and understanding it by our parents, then it's sort of an initial shock or an initial trauma to us to understand that this is what human beings do to other animal life. Some of it hits harder, and that resonates more with us from a very early age than others. And some of us don't really think too deeply about it so much after the initial understanding hits us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. So, just through familial indoctrination, I never really got totally hooked or addicted to eating meat, but I did it for a number of years when I was younger, all through my teenage years. And then when I was about 25, I read a book. I was in a relationship with this woman who was already vegetarian. And then she read a book called Skinny Bitch. And after reading that book, she was like, I'm going vegan. And I didn't even know what vegan was at that time. I was like, what's that? And so I read the book. She was, her just abrupt inspiration to do that got me curious. So I was like, oh, I'm going to read that. I read the book, and then I decided, okay, I'm going to do the same. And for me, my experience with making that transition was quite easy. And I basically went cold on all of it. Didn't do any gradual transition. And for me, I think it was easy to do because, like I said, I wasn't really addicted to meat. I ate it because I got kind of, I got conditioned to think that that was okay and normal, of course. And then over time, just consuming it a little bit here, a little bit there. In my family, it wasn't a staple thing every night having it.
Right.
It was like a couple times a week, maybe.
Right.
So anyway, for me, making that transition, and I did that that was like a little over 10 years ago, 2008. I made that transition to going totally vegan. And during that time, I was working as a landscaper in Seattle, Washington. And I have to say, thinking back to that time, I don't think I've really ever felt a whole lot better, like physically, mentally, just felt really good after a few months of being on the plant-based program.
Mm-hmm.
So just a little note for everybody out there who's listening, who is on the fence about trying it or has tried it and did, do it right, like you said, and you'll get the good results. And I must have done it right the first time.
And your body was largely, as you said, accustomed to eating more of a plant-based diet in the first place, because, as you said, you weren't a big meat eater, or your family really didn't prepare a lot of meat-based meals. So it's like, for people who are coming from it from the perspective where they really were having a meat-heavy diet, that's why I recommend that gradual transition. And even if you start by like just eating one meatless meal a week and then just go to 2 or 3, you could just do it like that. There's no need for an abrupt, a sudden change. If you were to try it like that and it works, okay, well, I almost consider like the people who do it like that kind of got lucky, because a lot of people who do try it and go very quickly with it, they don't have as much success. And I see that over and over again. So it's good that your body, your physiology kind of already had the way paved for it in that respect by the way that you were eating, and to do it in a less gradual way, let's say, was successful and easier for you to do. So that's very fortunate, and I'm glad it worked out that way.
Yeah. Something that I wanted to mention along that I think appreciate is,
Sure.
so back then I did that. I only did it for a year, and then I got into during that time, oddly enough, some of my coworkers, I used to smoke cigarettes, and I got on this plant-based program, and my coworkers called me out, and they like, so what's up with this? You're concerned with your well-being, your health stuff. You're eating plant-based, but then here you are smoking a cigarette after your
they're
vegan
seeing
burrito
some,
at lunch, right?
internal contradiction regarding your
Yeah.
health, overall.
So they
health,
called me out on that, and I thought about it didn't take long. I was like, okay, yeah, I've wanted to get rid of this nasty habit for a while. So eventually I worked into that, and that was something I didn't do cold turkey. So like you're saying, when you're addicted to something, and hopefully people that are addicted to it can first acknowledge that they are addicted, because that's the first step, right?
That's exactly right.
Making a gradual movement away from it is totally necessary. Like, I did some preparation when I quit smoking to get the body ready, cleanse the liver, and be prepared for the withdrawals, or be more prepared to handle it and not go into shock. So, but anyway, so was on plant-based program initially for a year. Then I got through my research into what I was preparing to quit smoking, the knowledge I was taking in for that. I came across Dr. Mercola and started reading his newsletters and articles, and kind of got sucked back into eating some dairy and some meat on the basis that it's okay as long as it's produced humanely, right?
Yeah,
so for a few years,
heard that justification over and over.
Yeah, and the whole thing, like, it's natural, normal, natural, necessary. Like, we need certain things from the animals. The protein's different than plant protein, all that stuff. So anyway, I got sucked back into it and started actually fishing. I live in Washington, and I got into fishing for salmon and steelhead. And primarily when it came to meat, that's all I ate for a while, a few years. And I have to say, for anybody out there who's listening that thinks that the animals are here to serve us in that capacity, to use as food, I have to tell you, it's not true. It's wrong. And if you haven't, I'm trying to speak specifically to people who've never actually killed an animal. If you haven't done it, then it's easy for you to think that. Right. Try killing an animal, and then talk about how that animal reacts to the action you're taking against it, because they don't want to die.
Right.
I've never had a fish just jump out of the river onto the bank and be, willing for me to just knock it out and cut it open and bleed it. It doesn't work that way. They want to live. They have a purpose, and it's not to serve us and our stomachs.
When there is alternatives that we could engage in that doesn't necessitate that. Again, I've been honest and said, in a very survival-based situation where there were no other possibilities to sustain my life, would I sustain my life by taking the life of an animal to sustain mine? I would do it in a survival situation that absolutely mandated that. That said there was no other way. But when there is another way to do it, there is a viable alternative that can maintain optimum health. This is what many people still don't believe is necessary, that believe the necessary, quote, argument of meat eating justifications. Whereas it is definitely provable that it is possible to sustain our human life without doing that to the animal kingdom. And that's all this level of honesty is all I want people to get to, to just understanding that's the scientifically provable truth regarding the matter. And we can make it now it's a choice, right? And we can make a choice about how we want to behave in the world after we have that information clear in our minds regarding that it's not necessary and that we do not need to do this. It's not a need or a necessity. So thanks for, reiterating that point. And it's absolutely true. Yeah.
So what I was getting back to what I said about something you might appreciate. I don't know how many years. It was maybe like five years, maybe actually about 6, where I was back to eating a little bit of meat and select, very limited dairy products. I used to really love cheese, but I tried not to get back into that because cheese seems to be pretty addictive. But anyway, when I got turned on to your podcast and all of your work, it was you who got me re-inspired to go back to being plant-based, because I thought back to my childhood and how I instinctually felt about this whole topic. And you've brought to my awareness the occult reasons why we should not do this, because of the negative consequences it will manifest in the world, especially given what you were just talking about, how we live in a type of society now where the structure is such that we don't need to be killing and eating animals to survive and provide nutrition for our bodies. We can get it through other means, and it's just not necessary. And so for those occult reasons, I got all that from you, and I was like, okay, I have to go back now.
I'm very glad that I was able to help you, to influence you to look into those matters regarding the occult aspects of this. This is what I did with the earlier work that I posted regarding this topic in the earlier podcast. Again, I believe it was episode number 122. And I posted with that occultism and vegetarianism, which gets into what slaughterhouses do to the etheric and energetic field of the earth. We have to understand we're all interconnected energy. And as one suffers, even one being that contributes to the negative etheric energy field of the earth, because it's all operating as one living dynamic energy field, and we have to understand we're all part of that, and it affects us, and it takes like somebody really being strong and to get themselves to a strong place in their mind, body, and spirit to be able to even come to the point where they're able to resist that overwhelmingly negative etheric field that's constantly having death and suffering interjected into it at the energetic level, to even get themselves up to a point where they are able to process and understand truth and then work on their body and their mind and then help others. I mean, it's a process and a journey for any individual to do that, knowing how badly polluted the whole etheric energy field of the earth is and how it got that way. So it's like, that's why I try to work. I have a lot of shortcomings when it comes to understanding how weak other people are regarding that. Because I'm strong in doing that, it makes me automatically, look at other people should automatically be that strong, but they haven't done the lifting that I've done. You know what I mean? I may not do a lot of physical weightlifting. I try to go to the gym when I can, but it's like, it's the same thing. You try to throw a barbell at somebody who's never lifted a weight before, they're not going to be able to handle it. It's the same thing with all of this information. It's like, if you haven't done the heavy lifting when it comes to the information, all of this info, it's going to be very, very, very difficult for people. They're not going to get it all at once. It's going to have to be a journey where they start with the light weights and build their way up, So it's a process. So thanks for bringing up that point. And, I am glad that I was able to point you to some of the more esoteric and occult knowledge when it comes to that, because that is the ultimate to understand where the truth of this all goes to and lies, is all in that space where we understand this is all about energy. It's operating at a higher plane of existence, at the unseen level, than that which is operating at the seen level. There's a lot more going on at that level where our senses don't reach, but there's a part of us that does reach there, and that's the spiritual part of us. So fantastic points. I really appreciate you bringing up those points.
Yeah, thanks for taking my call. Real quick, if you don't mind me adding, your original discussions in the podcast series on these actually spanned more than just one podcast. You had number 121, number 122, and then part of 123 was dedicated to that topic as well.
Thank you for reminding me of that and our listening audience. So it's those 3 podcasts, everyone, 121 through 123. Thanks, Ethan.
Cut out.
All right. Okay, I think that's probably all the time that we're going to have for this episode. I don't want to get into another caller and have him cut off, so I'll just take us out. And what I'll say about this whole series is I think it's been very great that I revisited this topic. I'm very happy on how it all went. The callers are unbelievably astounding. That's all I could say about it. Like I have the best callers in all of talk radio ever in the history of talk radio, talk internet, television, whatever you want to call it. Could not ask for any better callers for an all call-in show. So I want to thank everybody for listening to this and watching this episode of What on Earth is Happening. I hope you've found it informative. I want you to make sure that you check out the resources that get posted with the podcast for each episode. That can be found, as always, at whatonearthishappening.com. Click the podcast tab or just go to whatonearthishappening.com/podcast. And that's all the time that we have for this edition of What on Earth is Happening. Remember, ladies and gentlemen, government is slavery. We'll see you right here next week. Thanks for watching.